Hey, there we are. Welcome
Hi,
back,
everyone.
Mike. Welcome back and joining us again. Sorry about the early start. I really wasn't expecting that to kick us off. I was just expecting it to do a countdown for us, but it did kick us off, and so it is what it is. We're here.
Well, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
It was a blast last time, and we came up with a doozy of a subject here. And I think the problem is that we may be on the same side of this one. We're going to be talking about the difference between using state of charge and using voltage for your battery control. I don't know if we have anything we want to discuss this week. I know I spent all week testing this really cool 314 amp hour brand new battery. I was out of town, so I was like charging it up and charging it down and charging it up and charging it down. I saw you had a new video come out this morning.
Yeah, and I've got a lot planned. I've got a bunch of batteries that I need to test. I've got a HumpSync 314 that I've got to test, an EG4 314, and I'm testing right now 6 of the wiring batteries from Signature Solar. I got into rack and I got in 6 of the batteries, and I'm testing one of them right now. And so far, it's pretty awesome.
That'd be good to hear about, because the price on those was just out of this world.
And they're sold out. And here's the interesting thing.
Well, you know what? Cycle told me the same thing. They asked me to delay my release for a week because they're sold out. Yes. And when I saw the price, I was like, holy crap, now I know why you're sold out.
So I found out something interesting, and I think this is kind of brilliant. Let me show you something before we get into things. So you can see this wiring rack that's right next to me. Extremely well built. What's interesting is the screws for the rails that go across, the openings around the rail, and then the actual rails themselves, the slide that you slide the server on, that's where it bolts in. That's where it basically has its threads. All right, so where am I going with this? You can put any size battery in it of different height. You just need to re-drill the initial vertical rails, and you can fit the shelves wherever that you need them to be. So my Vatra batteries, which are 7 inches compared to these that are 4.5, I'll be able to redo all of the shelves and stuff 6 Vatra batteries in it, which it is hard to find any sort of rack for it. So I'm going to get another 4 of these and then start stacking other batteries vertical. And was playing around with this thing yesterday, so should be fun. I love doing DIY stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun doing the DIY stuff, because you get to play around a little bit with it. The last week I had done the week before last. Gosh, I'm losing track. Week before last, I had done the DIY 304 battery. I had moved it out of my RV and into the solar shed, and so I built that and then right into the watt cycle battery. And it's just like night and day. It's amazing just how much effort one is and how easy the other one was.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Oh, I'm sure you're loving that watt cycle. They make fantastic products.
That is an amazing. I mean, it looks like they've taken all of the feedback from all of the wall batteries I've seen, down from the way the display is, the way the plugs work, the way the breakers are located, just everything. And even gone so far as, you know how a lot of them you have to put the rack on the wall and you have to lift them up and everything. They've even gone to where they just have a couple of bolt-on straps, like
nice.
Y straps, and you just attach them to the side and screw them to the wall. So if you've got a good sturdy wall you can attach them to, you don't have to go to all the trouble of putting the big hanging thing on there and all that. You can just go boom, boom. Like I've got, I'm out in the solar set. I've got a plywall wall down at that level. And so I can just like whoop right into that 3/4 inch plywood. I don't have to worry about that battery moving.
Nice,
but
very nice.
It was a bear getting it. I was really worried when I got it in. The forklift unloaded it, and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to get this across the yard? Because it had to go across about 80 feet of grass to get there. That part worried me, but the dolly saved me. I did. I used a dolly, and it rolled right over, and then I was able to just teeter it right up into it was about a 6-inch lift into the shed. And it just,
Okay.
once I got it up there, just boop, rolled it up. And the wheels on that thing, it's got those big, beefy wheels. I mean, they're just fantastic. So I was pretty impressed with the wheels. Oh, I'm not even watching the comments here.
That's the neat thing about those 314s. They're big enough to have a lot of capacity, but they're still movable. Whereas the ones that are 600 and some odd amp hours, at 600 pounds, you're not moving it.
Yeah, you're not. Those are going to be permanent placement type batteries. I still have a bug. I want to build one, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be able. I don't think I want to do one of the kits. I mean, I wouldn't turn down a kit, obviously, if one came in,
Right.
but I really think I want to do it all the way. I think I want to pull the cells, run the wires, do the connectors, do the whole, pick the VMS, do the whole thing, build the case, the whole thing, because it's just, for some reason, that those feel special. Although I thought I heard somewhere that there was even going to be a bigger one come out. And I don't remember where I heard that. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard that there's even bigger ones that are coming out. It brings in the question, this is still a little bit off topic, but how much concentration can you have before it's a concentration risk? Meaning, if you have a cell that starts venting and starts having an issue and it propagates to the other cells, how many are too many? If you go back years ago when server racks were a little more popular than they are today, they always said you must have an air gap between them for safety. Well, now you have more than that capacity inside of a single case. So is now the safety that's null and void with that air gap, or is it still the case, but it's kind of swept under the rug? Now it's all put into such a large unit.
Well, and I think I'm not so sure that it's swept under the rug as much as they're built internally now to properly ventilate without the space, would be my guess. Because even now, the rack mount batteries, even a lot of those, and you've dealt with probably more of those than I have, but even now, they're not even, sometimes even the gaps aren't even there anymore. They're placing them right next to each other, which I'm wondering if that's just the design of the actual battery itself is a little bit bigger. It allows for a little bit more air and breathing room.
Right. Yeah. I mean, technically, you should have at least a 1/4 inch, but a lot of people say 1/2 inch to 1 inch.
Yeah. Well, anyway. All right. Let's see if we got Shrek from Berlin, or Shrek Berlin. I don't know if you're from Berlin or if you're Shrek, if your name is Shrek Berlin. Either way, hi. Good to see you. Welcome to the show this week. We're going to be covering batteries and how we charge. I built us a couple of content pages, Mike, so we would have some subject to go to. I also went back and hunted down a bunch of viewer comments. So at some point, we'll stop and take a couple of those. And then we'll go back to our discussions. Sometimes I put them all at the end, depending on how crazy I get involved in the content. And then sometimes I mix them in without it. So if we feel like we get to a point where we run out of things to talk about, which if I would find hard to believe, but if we do, I'll pull up a couple of questions from the readers. We'll make sure we answer them. I think I ended up with about 20. So there's a lot. So we'll probably need to take some time here. Let me see if I can find them. While we wait, I am going to put a QR code up on the list up here. This is Mike's solar form. I know that he. I logged in. I got my account this week, Mike. I didn't have time to do anything for it, but if you scan that code, it'll take you directly there. It'd be nice if you guys sign up and go out there and talk a little bit about solar and stuff. I know he's not going to do too much self-promoting himself, so I'm going to do it for him.
Thanks for that.
And so, yep, you're welcome. And it'll help him out. And I think last week we got 3 or 4 members signed up for you. So hopefully we'll get that again this week. But that's that. I'm also going to start a poll. I don't know how this works. I'm trying all these new things within the software this week. So I'm going to start a new poll, which basically just ask, what do you use? Wow, I got a misspelling here. Let's just see if I can fix that yet. Fix that before I do it. Edit it. What do you use? Is that fixing as I type? No. Good. That way you don't see me redo it 8 times. Wow, that is really touchy keyboard. What do you use? Okay. I read it 3 times. There. Okay, so I'll leave the poll up during the live stream, and we'll see what it comes down to and how many different people do it. I think if you answer it, the poll goes away off the screen. So anyone who's interested in, I don't know if it's showing up on their screen or if it shows up in their chat. Yeah, any idea? I have no clue. Let's see what it looks like over in the studio.
I'm gonna check.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't see anything on it over here. I don't know why. Either way. All right, so we've got several people online. I don't know who's here this week, but welcome to the show. Glad to see you, see all you guys here. I'm running around a little bit challenged with the new software, so it says it's there. I don't know if it actually posted. Do you think it posted? Have you seen it other than on the screen?
I can see it on my phone.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if I can interact with it or not, but I can definitely see that it's posted.
Well, I can move it around on the screen, but I don't know that I can. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move it up there so it doesn't interfere with anything for now. And that doesn't do any good online here, though, does it? On the vertical. On the vertical, it's covering your face. If you answer it, does it go away?
So I'm going to try to answer. Okay, see if I can put in 2.
Anybody in the chat, please feel free to comment if you get the. All right. Well, either way, we'll leave it up. There you go. You answered it. I don't know if it left it on your screen or not. Probably it'll show up on your phone. Anyway, so we're here this week to talk about state of charge or volts. And we basically have probably 2 of like minds here, but if we need to, I'll pretend to be the wrong team, even though I think the right team is, from my perspective, I prefer using voltage. I don't care too much for state of charge. I think that in the future, and maybe this is another year or 2 of technology, that I think in the future they'll get it to the point where I trust it better. But we're going to have to get to the point where at least the shunts that are in the battery are as high of quality as the ones that we can mount outside the battery so that their accuracy is there. And then they have to come up with a real way to consolidate them that isn't just averages of numbers, which is, I think the EG4 batteries do it. If you have one big one and one small one and you get 2 batteries, it kind of just averages them together, and it kind of is a little annoying. So that's kind of my opinion. Where do you stand on this one?
So I would say where it comes to SOC, a lot of times it lags to where it's not necessarily accurate. And where I find it happening most is for folks that they either have too much load or they don't have enough solar to where their batteries never hit 100% and the cells never balance out. And if you don't go up to 100% often enough, the SOC just drifts more and more. And over time, you'll be in a situation to where it's pretty much, I wouldn't say useless, but you can't trust it if you don't hit 100% at times. So I think a lot of it has to do with your setup. I think SOC is good as maybe a guide, but I just don't completely trust it.
Yeah, I'm of the same. I'm of the same opinion, and I think part of it is that batteries aren't identical. All the cells aren't identical, so they don't discharge the same. And every battery bank isn't the same, and it doesn't discharge the same. And every group, I mean, you can go into a simple, and I could probably show you this. Let's see if I can get it to show up on the screen here. But you can go into a simple. Let me see. I do a share screen, and let's do that one. Now I've got some batteries that are not going to show up this. I've got some things that are not going to show up this week on the on my screen, and I'm going to share this screen. We'll save that one for later. There we go. All right. So, oh, you know what? I can hide that. There we go. That looks much better.
Okay.
Now, for those of you on vertical, I haven't quite got it to where it allows me to set these images at just the right spot yet. These faces, I would have liked to have got them 3 on top of each other, but for some reason it wouldn't let me do it. So I'll get that figured out. But either way, so even today, I've got 3 batteries running on this bank in this 90% here. So you can see here, I've been cycling up and down, up and down, up and down for just the sake of testing the battery. But I've got 3 batteries in the bank, and one's a 380, one's a 304, and one's 100 amp hour. And just ignore these 12-volt ones here. I did some moving of around of stuff earlier today and didn't get them fixed. But even with just those, you can see I've got the EG4 100 amp hour battery sitting at 97. The DIY 304 is sitting at 90, and the watt cycle 314 is sitting at 91. Now I have to say the watt cycle and the 30 and the DIY right now are closer, and this is state of charge. This has nothing to do with anything. And the one at the very top that we looked at is a state of charge coming from the Victron shunt. Now I trust the Victron shunt, but only because I have extensively played around with it and configured it and stuff like that. So I trust it as a complete bank. It does. But what I've learned is that some batteries, what I want to say is they give up their power easier than other batteries. Now it all ends up the same. When they get to the bottom, they all run out at the same time. One may run out a little earlier, but the other 2 catch up eventually. And when they charge, they all slow down, and when they get to the top, and the others, the ones that are behind, catch up. So it all ends up being the same. And a lot of people really fret about keeping them balanced as far as batteries themselves. I don't have much trouble with batteries staying balanced. I don't have much care that the batteries stay that closely balanced. What about you? Are you worried about that? As like cells, I know cells are a big difference, but
yes and no. So there is some concerns. The first one is if they are at different voltages. Say you have one battery that just charges up much faster than the others. And part of the reason you're seeing that is if you have a 100 amp hour battery and say 2 314s, just for argument's sake, the smaller amp hour battery is always going to charge up faster because it's going to have less resistance. So it's going to charge up faster in general.
right.
With that, depending on your charge voltage, if you have it at a conservative voltage, you're fine. So, 56 volts, what have you, is fine for your charging voltage. If you have it set too high, like some people set it at like 58, what will happen is you'll peg that one battery, and also your balance voltage, if that is too high, you can basically, I wouldn't say cook the one battery, but it's sitting there at a very high state of charge, and it's getting more abuse than the others. The other thing to worry about is at discharge. If you have a couple of batteries that hit the disconnect before the others do, then obviously you're pulling more amps on that last one. So it's harder on it at that point, especially if you're doing a very high draw. So you want to kind of keep them as balanced as you can, but there's a few ways that you can help with that. So the first thing is set your cutoff voltage to where it's high enough that all the batteries are going to cut off at about the same time. So if it's 20% or what have you. The other thing too is your charge voltage have a conservative level. Like I have mine at 56 for the charge, and then the float is 54. I
Yeah,
had
and I do
mine set.
56.2 and 54,
Mhm.
so I'm
Okay.
really close to you.
So we're
And
on the,
occasionally I'll bump it to 56.6, but that's only because the EG4 batteries reset their state of charge at 56.6. So if you have EG4
ah,
batteries and you want them to all hit peg 100, set it to 56.6, let it hit 56.6, and you'll see them all switch to 100%.
got it. And you can also go too conservative, because I noticed when I was at 55.8 for the charge voltage, my 280 amp hour EcoWorthies weren't balancing the cells, but
Yeah.
my 100 amp hour Vatchers were fine because it didn't stay up there long enough for it to balance the cells with the small passive
Some of
balancers.
them are balancing at 3.4 volts per cell, and some are
Yep.
balancing at 3.5 volts a cell. The 3.5 volts a cell need that 56.2 to get there, or 56.1 to get there, I guess it is,
Yep.
somewhere around that range. But yeah, I've noticed that same thing. There's a few of them that require it. And 56.2 is really a pretty safe zone. And I saw your video
Yeah.
recently. I think you said you'd use 56 even, which is
Right.
probably even more safe. When I'm having like, if I'm out of town and I notice that like one of my Victron chargers, the voltage is a little off from like the like needs to be calibrated. Like if I put it, sometimes you'll put in a new battery and you'll get a little bit of calibration difference in the voltage, even though there should be exactly the same. And I'll just turn them down to like 55.8, just so that there is no chance of it being higher than you think it is. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the 56 is a really good safe one. And 56.2 is what I use too. It works really well. Which with an occasional once or twice a month, I may put it to 56.6 to get it to
and I think
zero out.
EG4 recommended 56.2 for a lot of their batteries.
It did.
So yeah.
All their rack mount ones, I know for sure they recommend it 56.2. Although I thought I saw something in one of their wall mounts recently that was 56.4. But I'm not sure if that was them or if that was, it may have been Watt Cycle, to be honest with you. I don't really remember. But I saw it somewhere, 56.4 in one of them, in one of the wall mounts. I thought it was EG4 though.
And I guess that goes to one of the strengths with doing it, adjust charging by voltage, is you can adjust it for your bank, especially if your bank is mixed batteries. You could adjust it for what's best for your setup. And that's one of the things that I like.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was one of the things that I like about the DIY, the JKBMS and the DIY, is that you could go in and you could set instead of setting the pack voltage, you could set the cell voltage. And so you could say, I want the battery, when the first cell hits 3.4, I want the battery to start balancing. Or because you can get to the point where your cells are so out of whack that it won't start balancing until you get up into 56.8 or so, because none of them ever make it there. So I like having that ability, or I like having that ability to have them go to start early enough that it's not cutting things off. Because a lot of the times what will happen is they'll start shutting things down before your voltage gets high enough. And you don't want that. Now that's only in extreme cases, but I like that. I like having that ability to turn that on. That's one thing about the JKBMS, but that's getting into a DIY, a true DIY. But you do see all those packed voltages on most of your other ones. And I did notice that and I don't know if this is standard with the wall mount batteries, but I noticed that this new Watt Cycle has an active 3 amp charger. It's not the 1 amp. So they're going to, and that's the equivalent of a 1 amp on a 100 amp hour battery. That's 3 amps on a 300 amp hour battery. That will move that voltage around when it needs to. That will get it balanced.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's look at, so one of the things that I think we were talking about really is this voltage, and you'll see 13, this is based on a 12 volt battery, but all you have to do is multiply things times 4 for the sake of a 48 volt battery, and 2 for a 24 volt battery. So they're talking about, that piece in the middle, that between 13.4 and 13.2, That's basically 13.4 times 4 is 53.6 is your, and they're saying that's their typical. I think it's a little higher than that. It's usually 54 is what I've seen pretty much everywhere. And then, but you'll notice the knees. This is the part that's important that we're talking about
Yep.
here. From using, this is one of the big differences I see from using state of charge and using voltage. This flat plateau here in the middle, this region between, let's say, 10% and 90%, is the voltage is almost identical throughout the entire thing. And you'll see this on a lot of those percentage of battery monitors that work based on voltage. You'll plug it in and they'll say, you got 80%, and you're at like 25%. And then 3 days later, they'll say, you got 80%, and you're like at 80%. And you're like, well, what is this thing doing? And that's because in that plateau piece there in the middle, without an actual state of charge registering and counting. And the way I look at this is you have a giant bucket. Let's say you have a 5-gallon barrel of water, and you're slowly dripping this water out at 1 gallon per hour. The battery is, the state of charge is basically watching how much of that water drips out and calculating how much is left. And and that allows it to, most likely, as long as the meter that it's using to measure that water, as long as it's accurately measuring that water, it can get a pretty accurate reading. And that's what I've learned happens with the Victron shunt. Yep. Battery shunts are another thing. The problem that I'm having with battery shunts, and I don't know if this has been your experience also, is they're wildly inaccurate usually. And I contribute that to the fact that you've got a $100 Victron shunt that is a $100 component, and they're not going to put a $100 component inside of an $800 or $600 battery because the battery would be 800 plus 90. They're probably putting in $10 shunts.
And the other thing too is you can look at a battery, and if you watch it charge and you see it's at 85% and then it's charging, and then within 20 minutes it hits 100, and you're like, wait a second, how is it at 100%? Because you have one cell at the knee that just climbs up, hits a certain voltage, clicks off the charging, says, "Up, I'm full. We're at 100%," because it's looking at the highest out of all the cells. So if they are out of balance, then it's all off. SOC works decent if you bring your batteries to a full 100% on a regular basis.
And if you do it, and I found that doing it on a slow sliding scale when they're really out of whack is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
In other words,
yes,
bring them to a balance and let them absorb for hours at 55.8. Then bring them up to 56. Then bring them up to 56.2. Then bring them up to 56.4. And the slower you go, the higher you'll be able to get. Now, obviously, the cells peak out at 3.65. So 3.6 times size 16 cells is 58.4. You really don't want to go over 58.4. And it's not really necessary to go over 58.4. But you also have to get them over 3.4 volts or 3.5, depending on the brand of the battery maker, in order to get those active balancers to even start moving that voltage around. And the idea here is with those active balancers is it's taking from those high cells and it's giving that power to the low cells. Whereas if you have an inactive balancer, it's just taking a resistor and burning off some excess voltage, burning off some excess power out of the high cells to bring it down to allow the lower ones to come up a little bit. And so it burns down a little bit off that top one and then brings the whole pack back up again, and then burns down the top ones and brings the whole pack back up. So you will still have to actively be charging for a passive charger for a passive balancer to work. And that's pretty much true for active chargers also, because you have to maintain the cell voltage over 3.4 or 3.5, depending on how you have it, how it's configured.
If I can add to it, a lot of the server rack batteries, compared to the larger 280 314s, they might have the same passive balancer in them. So that passive balancer might work great in your 100 amp hour battery. But if you have the same pace BMS for the most part that's in the 280, like my EcoWorthies, it's the same size resistor. So you have to really top balance that to get it there. And if I have one that's starting to get out of whack, I'll top balance that one battery and just let it sit there with 2 amps going into it until everything's fully balanced, and now it's fine with the rest of the battery bank. But sometimes you have to top balance them to keep everything kind of synced.
Yeah, and this is one of the really big changes that's happened in the last year in balance in batteries, is the ability for the packs to balance themselves and keep themselves actively balanced. But what a lot of people don't realize is, in order for it to happen, you have to bring it up to that active balance voltage, because anything under that, the cell voltages don't really mean anything. They, just like when we talked about earlier, when batteries discharge at different rates, cells discharge at different rates. And so, well, the only time that really matters where the cells are is at the very bottom, when you bottom them out, and at the very top when they're above that 3, 4, 3, 5, at the very last 5 to 10%. And that's where you've got to get that battery, is up into that piece. Now, I'm going to switch slides here, and we'll come back to this one, but I'm going to switch slides for just a minute and talk about some of the advantages of, make us talk about state of charge for a minute, so that we get out all of the things we really don't want to say, which is the benefits of state of charge. And then we can talk about the ones we do like, which are voltage. Because there are, and don't get me wrong, I don't really dislike state of charge or voltage one way or another. I think they both have their point, and I think that voltage has a lot of pieces that are more important to me, and state of charge, I think, is the future. I think it's when we get to the point where solar systems are like your toaster. You bring it home, you plug it in, and you just forget about it and use it, or your microwave or your refrigerator. Then I think state of charge will actually be a thing. Until then, I think it's kind of like the first couple of years that they had electric windows in your cars, and the electric windows didn't always work, and you had to buy new motors for them every couple of years. Or the first couple of years they had the automatic windshield wipers that only come on when it's raining, or mine come on randomly when it's foggy outside. So it's the same thing. At least that's my opinion. Is I think that they're still learning. They're still getting the technology for it down. And then the lack of a common protocol for state of charge is probably the absolute dumbest market move that these battery companies can make, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about you, but it is so frustrating to get a new battery and spend 10 minutes in their book, 20 minutes online, 15 minutes guessing, and then 3 days till you get lucky, and one time it just starts working. It aggravates the crap out of me. There's no reason for it. I just don't feel there's any reason for it whatsoever.
The other thing too is getting various brands to speak to each other. So it's rare that you're going to find someone that goes with all one brand. Now, let's just say if you go with EG4, if you get the inverter and you get the battery and they match up, you have the UL listing that covers both. There's, amazing for that. But if you look at more the DIY folks, that brand loyalty doesn't mean as much, and they might have 5 different manufacturers in their setup. Having them all talk to each other. So, for example, let's say that you have 4 different battery manufacturers. Can you cable them all together and they all talk to each other, and collectively they act as one? This is the battery bank. Here's what the SOC of your battery bank is, based on the communication between all these batteries talking to each other. It doesn't happen.
You can, but the problem is that it brings a new meaning to the word DIY. I've put ESPs on one and connect others to Home Assistant, and bring this one in here, bring that one in there, and then bring that all back to another DIY device that feeds the state of charge back to your inverter. But it is so fragile and so I don't know what I know the word for it. Fragile is really the word. Is yes,
Right.
it works, but you got this Frankenstein of connections and wires and devices, and not only that, you have to have an engineering degree to get all the electronics hooked up and working at the same time. It's just not worth the effort. So I've just given up on it. Although I have to say, recently, Home Assistant has become really good at Bluetooth connection to the batteries. You give it the security keys, and it goes boop, and it connects to them. It logs into them as if it's like it's a Bluetooth client, and it
Mm-hmm.
pulls. And you saw my screen for it,
Yep.
where it pulls all of the state of charge, and it pulls all the. I don't know why that screen won't switch. Forces me to remove it, but it'll, like, here. This is all my Bluetooth state of charges batteries from it, and it pulls them all. Now there's some of them that I can't get that way because, like, my EG4 batteries are not Bluetooth, so those I have to pull from Solar Assistant. So it's like you said, it's not worth it. The effort isn't worth it. Now I use it for monitoring and debugging. I don't use it for permanent good connections and reliability of shut down my system, something's wrong. If I was, that would be different. Okay, so let's look at let's look at a few of these state of charge ones. There we go. Well, that's interesting. It switched sides on me. How did it do that? I don't know, but it's kind of cool. Okay. So I don't even know what that did. That's the one I'm looking for. Okay. So acts like a fuel gauge. Oh, this is state of charge. This is, yeah. So the fuel gauge for the whole thing, that's actually a very good, that's one that I really do like. And I go to great extents to get that. I go to great extents to use my Victron shunt to pull that state of charge. I don't know what you use for, I think you said last week, if I remember correctly, you said build it stable enough where you don't have to worry about it, and then don't worry about it. I think that might have been your answer if I was summarizing it.
For my shop setup, I actually have a watt cycle battery that has, it's one of those golf cart ones that it comes with a nice gauge and it shows you what your state of charge is. So that's connected with all my other lead time batteries. So I mounted that next to all my fuses and everything else, and I just consider that my overall state. And just look at that. But yeah, for like the home system, I just it's charged every day.
You know, and I've done that before too, where you have comms on one of your big batteries, and you just plug it in and use that, and then let the rest of them just follow. Yeah, that's a very convenient way of doing it.
Now, I will be watching mine more. I will be getting more into Home Assistant and trying to monitor things because my setup's going to be changing very soon. And what's going to be happening is I'm picking up a bunch of different crypto miners. So instead of getting up to 100% and kind of staying there, I'm going to be chewing through a lot of power. So I've got an Antminer S19, what is it? S19K Pro 120. That I should be able to run.
The K Pros, those are 120s. I think I'm running the S19 Pro, not the K Pro, but mine runs at about 105. Yours runs at yours will run at 120. Those are good machines.
It's well, with the extra solar off the house in the summer, I should be able to run that 24/7. And then I've got a few other miners that are going to be coming in, smaller ones, and start, mining Bitcoin on some silent miners, and then also ETC again. I used to mine ETC a very long time ago. But so with that, I'll be getting my my charge state, my battery state pretty low. So because of that, I'm going to have to start keeping an eye on things unless I have automation in which with Home Assistant, you can turn on and off your miners based on your battery state of charge by using Shelly devices and some other cool things. So I'm going to be
and I do exactly that. I can the relays are pretty simple to wire. Then you hook up the Shelly to the relays to turn on the power, because obviously those bit miners are 220 volt, 240, 220.
Yes.
You're not going to be wanting to run those through the Shelly, but what you can do is you can use Shelly for a 60 amp or an 80 amp relay that clicks the circuit on, and that works really well. That's what I've been doing, and then I use my Victron Smart Shunt for the state of charge, because then you just go out and say, okay, look, the battery bank is 814 or 828 amp hours, go. And once you top balance that first time, then it is pretty accurate. I mean, that one's pretty good as long as you go into your Victron shunt your first time. Now, most of them coming out of the box are pretty close to right. But if you go in and you adjust that Victron shunt and do that one-time adjustment on it, it will be so close to right, we won't have too much trouble with it anymore. The only time then you have issues for people like you and me is we change our battery bank so much that it creates a problem. Right. Because you add 100 amp hours, and the question becomes, okay, well, how much did you really add? Was it 100% charge? Does it have 104 amp hours in it? Or did it have 97 amp? And that's where you start getting the differences.
So I got a possible fix for that. So what I'm going to do is just go purely off of voltage instead of off of a shunt, using some Shelly devices and a circuit that I'm putting together. But then use Home Assistant through the API for the miner and run the shutdown command. So that way, instead of cutting it off.
I did the only problem that I had is the Antminer module that goes into Home Assistant is a little flaky. One day it'll be there and it's working just great. And you go in, you can adjust it, you can tune it up, you can tune it down, you can do whatever you want. And the next day you go in there and it just gives you an error. And like today, I'll bet I could even show you today, my error today. Let's see what error I get today.
Well, that's unfortunate. Thought I had
it's I loved it when I saw it. I was like, oh, this is great. And the problem with the voltage is that you have we're back to that knee, the two knees on the end, and you don't know until it's too late. So see, now here today, it's not even here. It's not even showing up on my list. But I'll bet if I go in and say I want to add it, let me think, what was the name of that stupid thing?
Anything under
there it is, miner. Now you'll watch. $5 says it'll give me an error because it's actually here and it's just not functioning properly. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I need to make sure the 10.0025, I'm pretty sure I fix it. So unknown error, which is what's weird, but let's just make sure. Oh, it's 37. Crap. Let's fix that.
Is it a static IP or dynamic?
It's static. It was dynamic at one point, and then I realized, oh, hold on a minute, this isn't going to work for me.
Right.
It should give me some SQL. Oh, it's not even a SQL error today. Today it's an unknown error occurred. Wonderful. Thank you.
It gave you a database error before. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, the one before was pointing to a Shelly device, not to a miner. But the miner is there and running, so at least I'll bet it is. Let's just make sure. Oh, come on. Really? You're being a pain.
You could ping the IP, see if it's up.
What is this thing doing? There it goes. All right, so no, it's there, and it's running on low power.
Okay.
Digibyte today, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Oh, I still got the screen. Oh, you can't see. Oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that this thing doesn't share the way my other one shares. Let me just remove this real quick. Add a screen. Let me see if I can add an actual. Sorry, that's my mistake. I want to add an item. Add a. What am I doing here? I'm breaking things. Give me just a second to finish breaking them, and then I'll get back to Share screen, Antminer. Okay, now I should be able to add that to the stage. Okay, there's what I was looking at. Sorry, guys, you couldn't even see it. So in my old software, I could do anything I wanted on one browser and it would change with it. Oh, you know what? This one's the same way. I just got to stay in this window. Okay. I had two windows. So I'm running on low power and Digibyte, I think, today. I don't know if I found any or not. See if I can get in there. Did that stay? Yeah, that worked. So you can see I shut off. I started this new thing with the new battery. As before, I had to actually turn the Antminer on in the morning and have the battery down at about 10%, or I didn't have enough storage to store all the power.
Right.
So what I would do is I would have both of them running at the same time. I'd run it all the way down. But now with the new battery, I'm doing the opposite, shutting it off during the day so that I don't have to deal with the heat. Yeah. That last one was rough, 133, just an hour or so ago. But yeah, so I'm doing the same thing, but the problem is that plugin is not doing what I would expect it to do. It's not. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it works perfectly. You don't have any problems whatsoever. And other times you come in and it's like it is today. It's gone. It's just completely missing from the thing, and you can't add it, you can't delete it because it's not here, and it's flaky. And they send out upgrades every now and then. It'll start working for a week or two, and then it'll go away again. So what I've changed it to is I have a Shelly device linked to this switch here, and this is a relay. It's I don't remember if it was a 60 amp or a 80 amp 240 volt relay. And basically the Shelly just turns the relay off and on, and that powers it up and powers it down.
So the low amperage input, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I think I used the relay was a 220 volt for the relay going through the Shelly because Shelly could support it. But it's like 0.01 amps or something like that. I think it's got a 0.01 amp fuse in it or something. I mean, it's something really stupid small, so that it's really, really minor. And if anything goes wrong, it'll just be a little fuse will pop, and that'll be the end of it. But I haven't had any problems with it. I just put it into a metal box, mounted it in the wall, covered it up, and haven't thought about it since.
Yeah, that's why I was curious. Did you put it in its own junction box, or did you put it in a service panel?
I put it in its own junction box. So the service panel runs down to, let's see if I can get, let me just see if I can show you a picture of it real quick. It'll be a little easier.
But that's the reliable way to do it. So you just cut power to it.
I just cut power to it, and then now it was really the only other thing that app did differently that I didn't like is that it would put it on low mode, so you could control it from high mode to low mode to off. But even off, the fans ran.
The power supply fan, right?
Yeah, the power supply fans would run, and the CPU was still running, but the processors were not running. So you still had the control board and all of that running and stuff. And I wanted it off, because even those were a couple hundred watts. I was amazed how power hungry the control circuit board was.
Right.
I know there's just a picture of it here in the wall. Right there, Antminer, that's the one right there. Let me just see if I can skip to it real quick. What is this? Yeah, you can't see it down here. This is not, must not be the one I want, but I've got two. Oh, this is before I moved it into the box. Okay, I just need to go to a more recent video. That's the first variation of it. I didn't have the relay on it and stuff, and then I realized I really needed to be able to turn it off and on, and so I built.
And how reliable is the Shelly with turning it on and off? No issues at all?
I have not had any problems. There it is. There's the BitMiner power wiring automation. So it's actually named exactly what it should be.
To do this,
and this was a live stream that I did one night. So I think right here.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
So right down here, I mount the box. So this video is about me mounting the box. There it is, right there.
There we go.
Power's going to be stuck.
And so the power just comes in this side at 220. Goes into the relay, comes out this side, and goes to the power outlet. And then the Shelly relay, I just connect it right here. So I sprung right off of the positive here, and I use the common for the other side. I think I actually ran it with 120 instead of the 240, but the relay actually supported both.
Now that relay, is that also a Shelly one?
The relay is a Shelly. No. The relay is not. The relay is an air conditioner relay. You need a high power 60 or 80 amp air conditioner relay. And the reason I did the air conditioner is because they're used to those compressors coming off and on and having that big voltage pull. Now the amp miner won't have that big voltage pull when it turns on, because until it amps up the processors,
it's a soft, right?
It's a soft 12 volt. Even when it's fully running, it's a 12 volt. I mean, the thing's got these giant 12 volt bus bars running through it. It runs like 200 amps at 12 volts internally. And it's like one of those that you don't want to take the cover off and have it turned on, because that thing has got to be super dangerous. But all the wiring is for the powering of that thing is ran with bus bars. I mean, it's just giant bus bars. There's no wires. They're giant bus bars.
Interesting. Okay. Now that makes sense then. Yeah, I'll have to get that part number from you.
Yeah, and this one I'm pretty sure has the link for it.
Is it in there?
Wow, it's not here. Hold on, I'll get it for you.
Yeah, that would be good. Maybe I'll go that route. What I could also do is just they have these smaller fans that come with the power supply, and it's got adjustments on it as far as the voltage to the fan. I can mount an extra one of those, so I have some additional airflow. So after I cut it, that other fan is still moving a little bit of air towards it, and that way, at least it. Oh, that's cheap, $16.
Yeah, and there's a 40 amp 240 2 pole. So it routes both of them in, so you can hook up your plug. Now they do sell the cheaper ones for the smaller, but I wouldn't do it. I mean, even though you're not pulling but about 20 amps, I still wouldn't do it. So it was pretty cheap. And then you add the relay, the Shelly is about the same price. I mean, it's the one really that's more expensive than this one.
Right.
I'll put a copy of I'll put a link out for you. I just posted it in the comments. There it is. And then we should probably get to a few comments here real quick before we go any further. Let's go to Trek. We talked to you. Hi, glad to see you. Roy, good evening, sir. Glad to have you back. Sorry it's taken us so long to get to the comments. Make sure you answer the poll question up at the top. 1 for state of charge, 2 for voltage, 3 for what? Huh? What are you talking about? And then we have Roy. I forgot comms to the battery. I just forget the comms to the battery. Yeah, well, most of the time I'm the same way. The only exception I have is in the coffee trailer, the video that I just released. I did it there, but that's because in the actual coffee trailer, if it's going to go down, I want the alarm. I want to know to go out, plug the generator in, and run it there. But Mike said hi. I said hello. Voltage don't work too good. Roy, I want to know why doesn't voltage work too good? the voltage don't work too good for knowing how charged up your batteries are, or voltage don't work too good for what I do here and on the voltage is the only time I'm really worried about what I need to know is when my batteries are about 48 volts, I know I need to charge. That's the number I use. Now, you can use 46, you can use probably 50 if you wanted to, somewhere in that range. 46 to 50 is probably a safe bet. I use 48 because that's about the time it hits that knee. It tells me we're usually at about 8%. And then I use the top to know, hey, if they're too charged, to stop doing stupid stuff. Shut off anything I need to shut off and keep the chargers from running. But other than that, and it allows any big chargers to stop absorption at those rates too. So as long as you pull it down to 56, like we're talking about 56.2 or 56, I haven't seen any problems with it.
No.
That you agree with all that?
I agree. You want to pull that slide back up?
Sure.
We got a bunch of good things on there to go through.
All right, we're talking about the state of charge slide.
No, that one right there. Yes.
Yeah. Let me get rid of this widget here, and let me hide that comment for a minute. Oh, well, we can still get it through with the comment up there for a minute.
I think we got the first and then maybe the second one done. Oh, the second one,
yep.
Generator start. Yeah.
Great for automation. I think that's where we went. I'm not sure we actually read the comment. Better for runtime estimates. It is. It allows you to. I know I can take the state of charge and I can say, okay, I'm going to start the bit miner and I got this percentage and it burns this percentage per hour, and it'll be running at 7 a.m. when I get up, and I'll just start it and go to bed and not worry about it. Now, the automation would shut it off in my case if it did get too low, because I have a bottom barrel automation that basically says, you get to this point, stop, wait for the sun. That way all the refrigerators and freezers and everything run.
Yeah, and number 4, something that voltage drop. That is a big thing, and it depends how big that your battery bank is. The larger the battery bank, the less voltage drop. So like with my house setup, I can have the HVAC turn on, especially in the winter time, that heat pump kick on, and the heat strips, and I'm only dropping 0.2 of a volt because there's enough batteries in the pool that I don't get much of a voltage drop. But I'll see folks that will have an inverter, especially like the grid tie folks. They'll get an inverter. They'll have like 2 batteries, and then when they start to turn stuff on, you might have enough amperage to supply the inverter, but not enough to not have a big voltage drop. And that's where you can kind of never have enough batteries, because the whole system just not only in a way gets safer, in a way it's less safe because of concentration risk, but in a way it's safer because the batteries last longer because you're not putting a heavy load on them, so they'll last longer. But the other thing too is you don't have that voltage drop. I mean, it's pretty rock solid, and I keep adding on to mine, and hopefully I'll be sitting good for this winter. What I've been trying to do is size my setup for the winter, and I failed last winter. So this is version 2. It's an improvement. So, yeah.
Well, you got harsher winters
cold,
than I do, though. For me, winter is 60 degrees. For you, winter is negative 60 degrees.
Well, no. So the thing is that, so for me, winters, it's normally highs are in the high 40s, and that's typical winter days. So it's not too cold. It's not like Chicago, but we had days that, it was in the high 20s and then in the low to mid teens at nighttime. And that's when you run into issues because you're off of batteries that are, say, 30 degrees. And we all know that once your batteries get cold, especially under 50 degrees, their capacity just drops tremendously. So you can see some of my batteries around. Here's a bunch of them. And then there's some more. And then more. And then you have the shop system. And then I got more batteries I'm testing out there. But
that's a lot of batteries.
Argue with and say batteries sometimes are more important. The size of your battery bank is more important than the size of your solar array, especially if you end up having a cloudy day or two.
And a perfect example of that is if you have, I used to believe that you could get, if you could get to where you could charge at 10% per day, that you are in a nice spot, but you have to have enough autonomy for that to matter. Because if you don't have the ability to go for 3, 4, 5 days at a time, then you basically start running into problems keeping your system up no matter what. And you can come back from it slowly a little every day. And so you don't need as much battery power. Now, if you only have a day or two's worth of autonomy, then you have some severe problems and you need more, you need more solar panels. 10% recovery isn't going to do it. But I have no problem in a normal system, in a normal house system, in a normal backup system like that. Now I have a bunch of weird use cases. Let's say coffee trailer is completely odd. It needs X percentage to go out and do a day, period, the end, no matter what. Because you never know if you're going to be parked under trees, you're going to be in a park, or if you're going to be in the middle of a parking lot. Being able to run Bitminer is a different aspect too. It needs a certain number of kilowatts to be able to operate for a certain length of time. But at the same time, with the automation, I don't care. I know I charge all day long. It turns on at midnight, or lately I've had to start at about 8 or 9 o'clock because it's got too big of a battery bank now. It doesn't have enough time to burn it all off. And then it shuts off at whatever time in the morning it needs to shut off for to let it charge up the next day. So those are some weird use cases, but that doesn't change anything. NSB, I wanted to say hi. Combiner box while you guys chat. Nice. And Jules, hello, Jules. Welcome to the channel. Not sure if you're new or not. I don't remember seeing your name before, but welcome. Watching from SVG in Caribbean. Welcome, Caribbean. Simplicity again. Welcome back. So we were talking about, actually, I'm getting the hang of these screens, aren't I? Except when my microphone fell off a minute ago, I had to switch it to only you. We won't tell anybody that's what happened, though. Works well with smart systems. Now, this one, if you're looking for a system that you plug into your house that automatically turns on the grid, automatically turns off, automatically just kind of plug it and play and forget about it, and you've got grid backup and you're not really worried about anything other than peak shaving or something like that, then this one is a really important one. This one can mean a lot to those people, because this would mean, you want to shave off the hours from 6 to 9 every day, and you want to shave off from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And you want to make sure that you don't use any grid power during that time. This would allow you to do that. And I've even seen people in the Texas area where they have free power at night. They'll go in and won't even get solar panels. They use the night charge to run their system. The freebie power at night, build up their batteries and then run that all day long. Let's keep moving on. You can still hear me, right? Okay. Actual energy usage with shunt and BMS. Yeah. And that's what we've been talking about. That's really the only way that I find it useful, is with the shunt. I don't know if you've found any other way to use state of charge. I think that individual battery state of charge is just a cosmetic thing. I don't think it helps a lot. Question is, how true is full float is more stressful on
Agreed.
than top voltage? I'm not sure I understand the question. Or you think that they're saying at the what do you
So if your
mean?
float is at, so I'd say as long as your float voltage is correct, you're fine. Like 54 volts is fine.
Oh yeah. So I think at the very beginning we talked about that having a charge voltage of 56, 56.2 between the two of us and float voltage of 54. And I think 54 is a pretty well accepted standard at this point. I haven't seen anyone deviate from that in quite a while. I did see a 54.2, but right there in that area. And you had one that was a 50 that had a top that had the balancing going at a different rate too, didn't you? 54, 55? Yeah, I don't remember. All right. Let's move on to voltage. And we didn't go over the weaknesses, but we'll go back to them. I think the strengths on both of them is more important at this point. The first strength is it's simple and universal. And when you have a bunch of different batteries from different manufacturers and you're not trying to figure out how to get all the different protocols to work, all the different banks to work, and then have them all consolidate all into the same place, that's where I think is the biggest advantage to using voltage. Is that where you feel the same thing, Mike? I think your audio is being delayed. Are you current in the live stream, Mike? I think he's having problems with connections here. All right, so we'll just go on until Mike, interrupt me when you get audio back. So moving on to excellent for protection and its critical loads, low voltage cutoffs, high voltage limits, and the last line of defense. This one is probably the most important from my perspective. I like to know that if no matter what batteries I connect, the nice thing about a lithium iron phosphate batteries is you can just connect them to the bus bar, and the voltage, if you're set on voltage, then you don't really have any fear as long as you've got those set to reasonable highs and reasonable lows. Like 56, I use 56.2 for my charge voltage. I use 54 for my my float. I use 48 for my switch to grid. And as long as you have that set, I haven't seen a case where I've really gone wrong. Now, if you can get out of balance occasionally and have one that's, registering at 88 volt, 88, 88% and another one at 100%, and one will sit there and charge even after it's hit 100% for a few hours. But as far as dangerous, it alleviates a lot of that. It's great for the protection side of things. And then instant response to real conditions, reacts immediately to load changes, and shows stress on the batteries in real time. And this one's really good also. It allows your system to respond, your charge controllers. A lot of the times I'll have, in addition to my 6000, I'll have Victron charge controllers or multiple charge controllers. And it allows them all to respond and help out with absorption and float and making sure that there's enough power coming in, even when my batteries are full, enough power coming in right now to supply all the loads. And so that one's really good. And then we have no additional cost. It's built into every inverter, charge controller, BMS, no shunt, extra monitoring or anything like that. That's absolutely true. I still prefer to have the state of charge from like a nice Victron shunt, and then use the voltage for all of these strengths. reliable for empty and full extremes. This is true. You can have a battery show you it's at 0% and still have 50 some odd volts in it and still put out energy for sometimes a very long time afterwards. You can also have one get stuck at 99% or 100% and continue to take a charge for a very long time. Oh, there's Mike. He's back. Hey, Mike. I know we lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, we did. For some reason, the audio, I could hear you on the phone, but I couldn't hear you through my computer. Something had changed in StreamYard, and the audio had dropped from you, so I couldn't. So anyway, I logged back out and logged back in. So it's
Okay.
working again now. So apologies.
No big deal. I went through quickly the strengths and basically just covered, it's excellent for protection, instant response to real conditions, meaning, when everything gets into absorption mode or float mode, and if you have multiple chargers from multiple different sources, they're able to respond easier and better. They're not worried about state of charge. They're more worried about immediate conditions on the line of the battery bus. It's required. All of the inverters and chargers and everything, they all have setups and configurations for it. So you're not going to need extra configurations. You don't need any extra tools or anything, because every single inverter and charger on the market actually works with voltage. And that's the one universal language. It's going to be that. So there was that. And then the last one that I was covering was the 0% may not mean zero, but voltage does, and 100% doesn't mean full. But when it's at zero, taking 0 amps in, and it's at that full voltage, it's full, and there's no questioning it. It absolutely is where it is. So you can, if you like, you can go through cover some of that again, or you can talk about some of the weaknesses as you like, because with us both liking voltage, weaknesses are going to be important.
So with and we already spoke of SOC, correct? As far as all the pros to that.
Yep.
And did you bring up rapid shutdown?
I don't think it was on this list. I'm going to switch right back to it real quick for a second. So acts like a full gauge, great for automation rules. We talked about better for runtime estimates. We talked about that. More stable than voltage. We talked about that. Works well with smart systems. Advanced automation, remote monitoring. It has that, but it doesn't have specifically shutdown. And I'm kind of puzzled why would it be limited to state of charge? I don't know the answer. It is a genuine question if you do know.
So the reason being is that normally you'll have like a switch that you'll put outside your house, outside your building, what have you, that if there was a fire, the fire department, or if you knew something was wrong with your system, you can hit the button and shut things down. Now that will shut down your inverter, but your batteries, if they aren't communicating to your inverter, then the inverter can't shut the batteries down as well. It's not one big closed loop system. So the rapid
shutdown, you're talking about the connected rapid shutdown. It just goes, it just pops a breaker technically, I guess, in all of them, and just lets them all die out.
It's basically a kill command. Shut the BMSs down.
Is that truly a limit of it only works through comms, or could they build that to where they could be part of that shutdown switch? I mean, is there any reason they couldn't be? Because it's only a dry contact, right?
I mean, if there's a dry contact on the front of the battery that you can connect to, then yeah. I don't know which ones might have that, but that's definitely one of the pros, because if you're trying to, you're getting installed, and you need to make sure that it passes whatever county that you have as far as the requirements. Rapid shutdown, especially if you're tied into the grid, you're going to want to have rapid shutdown. And that's
Yeah.
like one of the pros of going with like all EG4 systems. So if the batteries and the inverters are EG4, then it all works together. You hit that rapid shutdown switch and you just know it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that sounds like it's a definite advantage. All right. Let's go through, unless you've got some other things here you want to cover. I want to get into some of these questions because we still got a ton of them.
Yeah, let me just go through this real quick. Response required for inverters, no additional cost, reliable. Absolutely. Weaknesses, poor SOC. Did you go through the weaknesses yet, or?
I did not go through the weaknesses on either slide. If you want to go through them real quick, please feel free to do so. I'm good with that.
Let's go through the one on voltage. So poor SOC accuracy, especially with life PO4 batteries, so LFPs. So yeah, if you look at the voltage, except for the knee, it's pretty much flat the whole way. And it's hard to tell the difference between the state unless you kind of memorize it. So there's a lot of good charts that you can find online for LFPs, and it'll tell you, if you're at 54, you're charged. If you're at 53.5, it's X amount of charge, and 53 is Y charge. So it will kind of, give you a good idea of where it's at by using voltage. You also have to take that a little bit with a grain of salt because it also depends on the load on the batteries at that time. Is there a voltage drop or not? Because that kind of, plays into it. And also, if your batteries are charging, that's going to be a different voltage because you're getting that fake reading, if you will, because the solar is assistant. It's charging it, so it's going to show a higher voltage. The moment that you stop charging and you give the batteries time to settle, that voltage is going to settle down to what the battery's actual capacity is at that state.
Yeah.
And that's listed right there. So heavily affected by load and charging. Absolutely. Voltage bounce, that is your voltage drop. Requires rest for accuracy. Yep, we just mentioned that. Harder to automate. There's, like I said, there's a circuit that I'm going to be making using some Shelly devices, which will kind of make that voltage that you need just off of battery voltage. You can automate off of that. So I got to find time.
The Homa system will help with that too, because it allows you to set timers that say, when you reach this voltage for X minutes, then do this, as opposed to when you reach this voltage, do this. Because if it's when you reach 48 volts, turn on the charger, you could have an air conditioner kick on and momentarily see that dip that would cause your charger to turn on. But if you're using like a home assistant for it, you can say, when you reach 48 volts for 60 seconds or 2 minutes, then turn on the charger. It's much more accurate that way because that allows for that influx of power and that hit and allows you to adjust for it.
And number 7 says different chemistries behave differently. And the first thing that comes to mind is never, ever, ever mix them in the same bank. So if you have 12-volt LFPs, don't have 12-volt lead acid batteries in the same bank. That would end very badly. Yeah.
And you're always going to find somebody who says they've done it and have done it successful, but don't do it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, that'd be like mixing, different lithium chemistries together. You don't want to do that either.
Yeah, they need it. You can mix different sizes, but just make sure they're all the same chemistries, all the same types of batteries, and you should be fine.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look real quick at, you did such a good one on that. Let's look at the state of charge weaknesses. So the state of charge can definitely drift over time. That's why it's key to make sure that your batteries hit 100%. I mean, if you can do it once a week, great. I know, depending on setup, sometimes you might not get enough solar to charge them up, especially in the wintertime, to where
it's rough trying to do that.
One thing that I do with that is when I use my Victron shunt, and if you've got it adjusted and really fine tuned for your system, I've gone months without top balancing, and the shunt is accurate. The battery stated charges are stupid. I will have battery stated charges that will say 30%, and the battery voltage is 55.8. It's just, you can't trust the battery stated charges to save your life. And a lot of them don't have adjustments. Now, if you're using DIY batteries ones like the JK or one of those other ones, you can adjust them, and you can get adjust the voltages to make sure they're exactly tuned, and then adjust the amperage pulls where you go in and you say, look, I'm gonna pull exactly 80 amps, and then I'm gonna make the adjustment within the BMS that this is 80 amps, and then it knows where 0 and 80 is, and then it can make the adjustment within that to make it much more accurate. That really makes a difference. But I haven't seen that in all of them. I know your Victron devices will allow you to set them. It will allow you to set 0 amps. It will allow you to set voltage deviations where you can go in and say, okay, and this is really important when you're dealing with multiple chargers from Victron, is if you have 3 of them, the wire resistance can maybe a tiny bit different, where one of them will show 56.2 and one will show 56.12 and one will show 56.18. Right. You want to get them all showing 56.2, and what I'll usually do is base them either on a shunt or base them off of, adjust them to where they all are exactly the same thing. It's a challenge of mine, is to see how close can I get all the Victron chargers to shut off or go into float mode or go into absorption mode at the same time. And I think I got one this earlier last week. I got 5 in a row within 60 seconds of each other. That's pretty good.
Wow. Another negative on voltage, if you put batteries in series, well, you can look at the bank voltage and you can have one battery that's at 0, but the bank says everything's good.
This is going to be, I'm going to tell you a funny story, and then we're going to leave it alone for another week at another time, because this is something we need to talk about. But it was very funny. I went to a customer's house Tuesday after last week's live stream, and I was doing a review of his system and giving him feedback, and he had 2 12-volt, 48-volt systems. So there were 4 12-volt batteries run in series. Mm-hmm. Both of them, one was 200 amp hours and the other one was 220 amp hours. And he had 2 of them. And I said, okay, in order to make sure everything's running, I really want to get it in a nice stress test to kind of get everything running, so I can check amperages on all the wires. I can put a heat gun on them and just kind of double check everything's doing what we think it's doing. We pull it up and it's running at 108 amps. I'm thinking, okay, I got a good pull here. He's got every device in his facility turned on, but I'm getting good show. And I push the amp meter over the main line and it says 108, and it matches his shunt. And he had some eco-worthy shunt. I was kind of impressed. It was really accurate. It was like my meter showed 108.2 and his shunt showed 108.6 or something. I'm like, well, for 100 amps, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Then I go over to the first battery bank and I put it on there and it says 106.7. I'm like, what? How can that be 106.7? And I go to the second bank and I put it on it and it says 2. And I'm like, okay, I think you got a problem here. And I said, one of your symptoms was your battery were dying early, right? And he says, yeah, really early. And I'm thinking, yeah, like at about 50%, right? He says, yeah, 50%. The little equal-worthy thing says at 50%. I'm out of power. I'm like, well, I know why. It was I said, let's shut everything back down. I'll go over there, pull one of the batteries, shows 6 volts. The other one show 13.8. The one battery had gotten so low that it had shut off, and it wouldn't charge because the other 3 were full. So when you put the charger on it, it would turn on. The other 3 would say, I'm full, and shut off. And this one would never get charged. And God knows how long it had been like that. Immediately, I suggest that we install some it was funny because we had just talked about it the day before, and then it happened the next day. So immediately I suggested we put some balancers on it. Unfortunately, 12-volt balancers are very common. They're very inexpensive. I think they were $60 a piece. We put 2 of those on there. And once those are installed, the problem will go away. But the good news is he charged that battery up independently up to full with the other ones. It was 220 amp hours. It took him 2 days. And once he got that all charged up, put it on there, everything started working perfectly again. Now he's got 100% of his battery back. A 50% increase with one little problem solve. Pretty crazy.
I'm surprised the battery didn't brick, that the voltage didn't go too low that it bricked.
Well, now you got to keep in mind when we put a charger on it, was one of those low 1 amp chargers that caused it to wake it up. So it probably was shut down, but I didn't actually check. I put it on there, hit it with 1 amp. It started taking a charge. I'm like, great. And then I put on a 20 amp charger and we let it run for the whole time. So it probably had bricked or could have. But it came back on. So fortunately it came back on. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, if it it could have been shut. All I know is that when it gets that big of a variance, what happens is that gap gets worse and worse and worse when those shunts are not accurate enough. And this one continues to lose voltage and these continue to gain state of charge. And that is a big, big, big difference that you're talking about there. But it was kind of funny. You had mentioned it last week. And then it happened to me the next day where it just 106. And I'm thinking, 106? How is that possible? The only way that's possible is if this thing's giving out nothing.
Which basically it had shut down. It
was. It had shut down. Yeah.
So that's lesson learned for everyone. Don't put batteries in series when they're LFPs.
and if you do, then get the proper tools to keep them balanced.
If you could top balance them. But if they're 24 volts, you can't find a top balancer.
You can't find one, or they don't exist.
I couldn't find one for my lead times. I would have top balance. I would have had, to where they automatically top balance, but I couldn't find 12 volts. You could find them all over the place. 24 is difficult.
Huh. I didn't even look. Fortunately, his were 12, and I knew exactly which ones to grab, and no big deal. But
he's in good shape now. Well, that's good.
Yeah, well, and now he's got the balancers on there, and they'll keep them in sync, and it won't happen again. But it's a lesson learned for all of us. If you're going to here is really the nugget you need to take away from this. If you have a 48-volt system, it is always better to buy the 48-volt battery than to buy 2 24s or 4 24s. If you have a 48-volt system, it is always better to buy a 24-volt battery than it is 2 12s. Price, I'm not considering that. I'm talking about from a practical standpoint. Internally of a battery, a 12-volt battery has 4 cells. The battery keeps those cells balanced because it's internal. It's got internal communication. It actively moves power around, inactively burns off excess when it doesn't have active balancer. 24-volt has 8 cells, same thing. 48-volt has 16 cells, same thing. But when you separate them into 2 separate units, they have no awareness of each other and they can't adjust for each other. And when this one's state of charge says 0, it shuts off. And when this one's state of charge says 100, it shuts off. And that means as that gap grows, your window of usage becomes really small sometimes. Usually not to the extreme of 100% like this one was, but he had it hooked up for years. And who knows, could have been like that for the last year.
That was part of the issue that I had last year with the lead times. I ended up bricking 2 batteries and didn't realize it. And they were on 2 different strings. And my setup was saying it's regular, 54 volts charged. But I noticed that my capacity was down, a good 20%, and I couldn't figure it out. And 2 of the batteries on different strings were bricked. And there's no way to know by just looking at voltage of the overall system.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to look at each one of them, and sometimes you got to go down into the cell variation to get to it. But Either
Yep.
way, that's the moral of the story: is buy the right size batteries or prepare to do some kind of balancing. You don't have to get a balancer, but you do have to manually do it on occasion, especially when you see the capacity start to drop, which is why top balancing is so important, and why doing it at a reasonable level, not just pump it all the way up to the top, is even more important, because you pump it all the way to the top, the battery is just going to shut down when the first cell gets to its limit, which will
Yep.
be reached really, really easily. Where are we on this list? Anyway,
We're
doesn't
back to-
replace voltage protection. That's the one, right?
Yep.
Nope. Yeah. So state of charge might say 30%, but voltage could already be dangerously low or under load. And this is the problem with one of the weaknesses of state of charge, is you could be at 0% and still have 30% of your battery, or you could be at 30% and have 0% of your battery. When they get off and the longer they go without top balancing, the more inaccurate they become. It's the butterfly effect in batteries.
Yep. Yep. Let's see here. It can lag behind real conditions, which is definitely the case. And requires extra hardware. So yeah, shunt, wiring, configuration. That takes time.
And a lot of the times too, it sounds like a very easy thing to add a shunt, but what a lot of people don't realize is that means that your batteries run to a bus bar, and then your bus bar runs to your shunt, and I'm talking about the negative side of your bus bar, and then your shunt runs across to another bus bar so that you can hook devices to it. And so you're talking about a lot of extra connections to put that shunt in there, and then you have to be very careful to hook all of your batteries in this bus bar and all of your devices on that bus bar. And I've seen multiple times where you go in and you have people who have one charger or one small device, one DC device or something attached to the battery side of things, and they don't understand why their state of charge is off. And that's because the constant charge or the constant drain on the wrong side of that shunt doesn't get registered. So you're constantly becoming more and more inaccurate as time goes by. And all of these state of charges, keep in mind, this is the whole point of what we're saying about inaccuracy. The whole basis of a state of charge is set to either reset to 0 when it gets down to a certain level, or reset to 100% when the voltage and scenario in a use case gets set to a top. That's how the state of charge stays accurate, is they do common resets of, this is the new 100%. It isn't a matter of you just fill the tank up. It's a matter of you only know the tank is full in your car for real when the gas pump stops pumping. Same thing's true with your battery. You only know it's full when it stops taking charge. Okay.
Speaking of shunts, you were speaking of like a Victron shunt. If you have multiple inverters and they have their own bus bars, you would have to have a Victron shunt for each one. But if it's part of one overall system, how do you measure how much is really going through? Because you can't really combine them all together. That would be an interesting scenario. So like I've got 3 inverters.
Why can't you combine them all?
Me. Well,
you can share batteries for inverters. Why can't you share a shunt?
Because I have 3 bus bars that are connected together.
Hold on a second. Let me switch to a screen where I can see what you're saying here.
So each one has their own bus bar. Now the bus bars are linked together, but then each inverter is pulling off of its one set of bus bars. So the connection would be this bus bar to that inverter, this bus bar to that one, and this to that one, and 4-aught cables connecting them all together. So I would have to have a shunt before each inverter, which would be interesting because none of them would show all of the amperage going through them. It would be divided by 3.
No, yeah, but you've created the same problem you've created with the battery. So the shunt works because all of the negative power goes through one shunt. And so you've created a case where all the batteries bleed into one bus bar, but you have different banks for each. Do you have different banks for each inverter, or do you have one common battery bank for all inverters?
One big bank, so 3 positive bus bars and 3 negatives. And I know you're going to connect the shunt to the negative, and all 3 negative bus bars connect to each other with 4-aught cable. So it acts as one massive
yeah, so you don't
bar.
really, you have a, yeah, you have a problem in the sense that your design doesn't allow you to measure all the flow of power through a single point of contact.
Correct.
You would have
Correct.
to, but the thing is that you're going to need one of the bigger one of the bigger BMSs in order to do it. So you would literally have to rewire them to all go to a common bigger bus bar with a single shunt, and then a second bigger bus bar to feed each of the independent bus bars that you're using, or to feed each of the inverters. But they do sell shunts that are much bigger. I mean, they sell 1,000 watt and 1,000 amp and 5,000 amp shunts. So I'm talking about the common 500 amp ones that most of us use, which I don't know if 500 amps would be enough for what you're doing.
I would need to have at least 750.
Okay, so Victron has a 1,000 amp shunt.
Oh,
so
okay.
that was,
I'd have to rewire it
the
all.
bus bars are where, yeah, you would have to rewire it. The bus bars aren't going to be cheap. The shunt's not going to be cheap, because then you're going to need 2 of those bus bars, and you're going to need the shunt between them. And then the wires from the main distribution bus bar is going to have to, wow, that would stink.
And I made my bus bars. So my bus bars, each one of them is 8 inches long by 1/2 inch thick by 2 inches wide. So
well, you support that voltage anyway.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, the amperage, you'll support a couple thousand amps going through the bus bars.
Yeah, so all you would have to really do is just change that to either add a new common bus bar where all the batteries go to, and have that feed your 3 of the existing ones, and put a shunt between them, or convert 2 of them to be your normal bus bar and 1 of them to be where all your batteries go to. I mean, either way, you're still going to have to put the shunt between them all. Now it also depends on what you want to use it for. So for me, I use it for Home Assistant. And because I use it for Home Assistant, you get to break all kinds of rules. Like, you could go in and you could take the 3 shunts and the power distribution, and I don't know. Let me see if I can
sync them together.
Yeah, you can. So I'm going to see if I can switch this back to this screen here. And then I'm going to go back to Home Assistant. Oh, it works. Good. So if you go in and you look at the actual device itself, which is down here under Victron's, this new Victron integration is the most awesome thing ever, because this just connects to a servo, or you could even use the Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pi version of their GX. Either one works fine, but then you just connect the shunt directly to it. And let me just see the shunt, this one. And so you get all of these measurements out of them. So here you would have what your current energy is. And you could take that energy and say, okay, look, I have, how many amp hours do I have? Where is it? Cycles, watts, blah, 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 kilowatts. Oh, is it measured in kilowatts? Deepest discharge, current charged energy. Yeah, so I got 1,492 kilowatt hours. Last discharge was 672 amps. There's an amp one here. Charged energy. No, it can't be 1,500. That's crazy.
I could see cumulative amp hour drawn.
There is a current charged number of amp hours that you have in the battery bank, and amount that you have drawn from it. Even if it's not showing here, What am I looking at? I'm looking at that is the shunt. But you could definitely do that. So you could do the calculation. You could say, okay, this one has this many amp hours. This one has this many amp hours. This one has this many amp hours. Oh, consumed right there.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mine's on float right now because I'm about to run a test on I got it hooked to grid running a test. So it just finished charging. Well, it's still charging. It's close though. So that's why it's showing so low. But normally this would tell you the amount of discharge. So you could take the sum of those three and know the total discharge based on it, and do the math inside of Home Assistant, which wouldn't be any problem. Which I do all the time for certain things, like here under solar power. I will combine these 3 or 4 depending on how many different inputs I have. And then I can look at each one independently, but when I see it on the screen, it just shows it with one. You could do the same thing. You could add all the amp hours together of the actual current usage, and then you would know the total, and then you could just divide one by the other and get your percentage of, your percentage of charge. So you could do it that way. And only because you're doing it for the sake of using it in Home Assistant. Now, if you want to feed it to an inverter or something like that, then it's completely different. You need something that's going to put it in a format the inverter understands it, and then you're going to need to,
right.
It's going to be a lot more complicated. But if you're just using it in solar Home Assistant, then you can get away with that for sure. It's there. The data's there. Off on a rabbit hole again. All right.
So the questions, right?
So the questions. All right. Let's get to some of these questions real quick so that we don't. Let me find them real quick, and they are right here. All right. So let's start off with question number 1. I have Jason M. Is state of charge mode actually accurate enough to trust? And I think we've pretty much answered this. There's times when it can be, and there's times when there's not be, but the overall answer is probably no. You would agree with that? Unless you're top balancing on a regular basis.
Right. If you get up to 100% on a regular basis, then it works perfectly fine. You just got to make sure that you get up there and let it stay up there long enough.
Yeah. You have to get up to the 100%, and then you have to let it balance the cells and get you a good starting point, because that's when the state of charge is reset. All right. We're going to move through these fast, so I'm going to try to move through them fast. You know how that will work out. Chris D says, why do people say state of charge drifts over time? Go ahead.
Because it actually does. So if you don't bring your batteries up to 100% on a regular basis and let them balance and let the SOC reset at what the top is for that battery, it's going to drift. Especially when you have multiple batteries, it gets even worse. And if you mix batteries of different sizes, it gets even worse, because it's looking at, you're going to have some batteries that are going to hit 100% and others that don't, because they're different amp hours or different brands, and they have a different BMS, which some BMSs discharge and charge differently than others do as far as the rate. So you can have 2 batteries, both 100 amp hours. One's going to charge faster. Part of it could be the different BMS and the charge and just discharge settings. The other part could be cells that have a different resistance. So if you're looking at a particular battery, they'll usually have the resistance of the cells pretty doggone close. And the same with the same, if you have a rack of them. But if you go with different batteries and they have different brand cells in them, then you can definitely have different resistance of the cells. And now, they're not going to charge up and discharge exactly the same. There's going to be some differences. So that's why it drifts.
And I think the important thing there to realize, at least from my perspective, is know that they don't charge up and discharge exactly the same. But it's not that important that they be exactly the same. You don't have to stress over it.
Right.
A lot of people stress over they've got to be exactly the same. They've got to be all at 62.3%. They don't. They can be a little bit different types of batteries with a little bit different types of percentages, and it will all come out in the wash.
Agreed. The key thing is just make sure you get up to 100% on a regular basis. Yep.
All right, number 3, Amanda K. Should I switch to voltage lead acid mode if my state of charge seems wrong? Amanda, this one's really going to depend on what you really are using it for and why you're using it that way. If, I've got systems like my coffee trailer where I use the state of charge because it's important for me to know. I know that I've brought it up to 100%. I know that it's not perfectly accurate, but I also know that I need an alarm when it gets to certain places. I need to know where 40% is. I need to know where 30% is, and I can't do that with voltage. Can't do that reliably with voltage. You have anything to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, the other thing is, do you have rapid shutdown set up? Do you have, that configured? If you do and you're connected to the grid and all of that, make sure you stay in SOC mode. Yeah,
good point. Brian, why does my battery say 100% but shuts off under load?
Oh.
This was a specific use case, and I can give you the answer to this and the answer is exactly the use case that we had before. You're not at 100%.
Right. And the other thing that I'm thinking of is, does he have a big enough battery bank? So if he has like a single battery and a big inverter and he's at 100% and he just pulls too much out of it, is the battery shutting off because the BMS is shutting off because he's pulling more out of the battery than what? So that's why I'm curious what the setup is.
And I had this exact issue on the coffee trailer last week. The first thing I did is I hooked up the first 3000 EHV and I didn't hook up the second one. I wanted to get the entire system configured and running and make sure that I had all the paths and everything done before I mount a second inverter and connect them together and have to deal with parallel and all that stuff. And one of the problems I had is I just put one EG4 battery in there. And what you just said, Mike, was exactly the problem. When I flipped on the coffee maker and I flipped on the air conditioner at the same time, the battery didn't have an issue with shutting off, but the inverter did. It said, hey, I can't pull enough amperage for the spin up of that air conditioner and the coffee maker running at the same time to do this. Now, once I added a second battery, it did. But I don't know if this question doesn't specify why it shuts off under load. My suspicion is that your inverter is probably either the battery isn't big enough, as Mike pointed out, or the inverter shutting off because you're just pulling too much for the inverter.
Right.
All right, moving on. Is state of charge better for lithium batteries than lead acid settings?
I prefer lead acid. I prefer lead acid.
I prefer lead acid also, with certain caveats of, is there some kind of requirement that you need state of charge for?
Right.
Rapid shutoff being one of them. There's a lot of jurisdictions and stuff that have all kinds of weird restrictions to get code approvals and stuff, and you don't want to be breaking them. So that would be my restriction there. But I prefer lead acid. That doesn't mean that a year from now, when they really start to perfect this, that it's going to be, that my opinion will stay that way. But today it's that way.
Yeah. And the other thing is, as well, do you have the exact same batteries in your bank? Did you mix and match? All that kind of plays into it as well. So if you have an EG4 inverter, you have EG4 314 amp hour batteries, and everything is, set that way to where you don't have a bunch of different brands, a bunch of different batteries, different capacities, then you know, SOC is usually better in that scenario. But if you have varied batteries, different sizes, different brands, I think lead acid is the way to go.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, we'll move on to number 6. Do I need a shunt for stated charge to work correctly? The short answer is, if you want stated charge to be more accurate because you have multiple batteries, then chances are the answer is yes, if you want stated charge to work correctly. But you have to make sure that whatever you're using for stated charge is compatible with whatever other equipment that you're using it with.
Yep.
And that can be, the batteries either have to be compatible with each other in order to work with, like if you have EG3 battery, EG4 batteries and EG4 inverter, easy. If you have 2 or 3 different types of battery types and some, you know, random inverter or an inverter that doesn't have comms, then the only option you're going to have is, you know, some kind of shunt. If you're looking at a single battery in a small van system, and the reason I answer this one is because I have a lot of my viewers are really small systems. You have van life, and you only have one 280 amp hour battery, and the shunt is just the battery BMS is just through Bluetooth is just wildly inaccurate. First, I would check to make sure there isn't a firmware upgrade that makes it more accurate. Second, I would check to make sure you can't adjust it to 0 amp pull, meaning disconnect it from all devices and tell it now it's 0. And a lot of times that will correct some of those problems. And then the third answer is, if none of that works, then yeah, a shunt will fix it, but it does add a lot of extra complexity. All right, number 7 for you.
Why does voltage drop so fast on lithium compared to SOC? It depends on how big your battery bank is. The bigger the battery bank, the less voltage drop you're going to see. And the other thing too is the gauge of your wires. So, and this is something we didn't talk about in here, but it's a good question, and it brings it up. If you go with much thicker gauge of wire, not only is it safer, but your battery bank is going to be balanced quite a bit more, and you're going to have less voltage drop. So on the batteries behind me, these cables are oversized. So I'm using 2-watt cable, 2/0, connecting each one of my batteries together. And then the 2-watt cable goes up to my bus bars. And then my bus bars connect together with 4-watt cable. And then I have 4-watt going to my inverters. So with that, there's very little resistance per foot with these cables. So if I start looking at some of these batteries, I mean, this one's 97. That one's 98. 98. I mean, they're all very similar. 98. Yeah, all of these are within one of each other. So the thicker the cable, and as long as they're equal length, everything has to be equal length, it's going to be equal across all of your batteries. Now, where SOC fails is when you have different size batteries. So you could see these say 97, 98. And if I pull this one out and I look at it real quick, it says this big one is 80%. And there's another 280 over there and another 280 over there. And all those are probably going to read 80% as well. So if you have different size batteries, I mean, the SOC is for the battery, but not necessarily the whole bank. But kind of going back to it, wire size matters. Definitely overdo the wire size. I mean, for the amount of amps that are going through. Because if you look at it, so I've got 2-watt cable, and a lot of these batteries come with very thin cable to connect them all together. Some will use, 4 gauge, 6 gauge. 2 isn't bad. But the problem is, if I take the output of these 3 batteries that are connected together each one has 100 amp BMS. Well, that's 300 amps that can go through this wire, and I got 2 watt, so I can flow a lot through it. And then I have it fused for that 2 watt cable. But you don't want to go with thin cables, because if you go with thin cables, it's going to be very hard to keep your batteries balanced, or it's definitely going to play a role. And the other thing is equal length, no matter what. Like I'll see folks on Facebook and they'll say, yeah, I'm having drift between all my batteries, and they'll have, you know, let's just say 4 EG4 batteries, and they're connected up to one inverter, and you can see that the cable length is based on the distance to the inverter. So one battery might have 8 feet of cable, and the next one has 6 feet, and the next one has 4, and the next one has 2. Well, if you're using like 2 gauge or something like that, there's a lot more resistance in 8 feet of 2 gauge than there is in 2 feet. So because the resistance of the batteries are so low, it makes a difference. And that battery that's on the end is always going to be lazy compared to the one that's closest to the inverter.
And one of the other things I think that's important here to note too is that when you're looking at the difference between lithium, when you're looking at lithium, the very beginning on that very far right-hand side, when your battery is fully charged, as soon as it comes off of that charge and you start using it, there's a major voltage drop. You may drop from 56 volts down to 52, 53 volts fairly quickly within a few percentage points. So you won't see much state of charge change, but you will see a huge voltage change. And then it may, if you've got a 280 amp hour battery, it may stay at that 52, 53 volts for the next 15, 20 hours, and you won't even notice the difference, or it'll be very insignificant as your state of charge continues to drop and drop and drop and drop. So that is the second half of this puzzle, is that these knees, this last 10% and this first 10%, you're going to see that voltage shift a lot. But that's one of the big advantages to lithium iron phosphate batteries, is that voltage is very consistent in the middle, giving you a very reliable system and providing lots of data and lots of power for you very consistently over a long period of time. But that initial spot, that part at the very beginning and the part at the other end, can also be caused to it, in addition to the wiring, as Mike mentioned.
Yep.
All right, now I got to go back and find where the questions were. There they are. Let's go back.
Sorry about that. Audio dropped off again for some reason. We can.
I don't even think they noticed this time. I kind of took you out and added you back in, and we didn't even tried to make it transparent.
All right.
But your audio worked right up to I could hear you, so it even if though you couldn't hear me, it worked out perfectly. All right, so here we go. Dan says, what causes state of charge to reset or recalibrate? And there's 2 major points here where it recalibrates. And the big one is going to be a full charge. And there's a lot of different configurations that go into this, but the basics are your battery has to get up to a certain voltage. Let's call that 56 volts, 56.2, 56.4 will be, a lot of batteries will label 56.4, 56.6, somewhere in that range. I use 56.2. Mike uses 56. It also has, once it gets up there, most of them won't reset until they hit until the absorption stops. And what I mean by that is that they'll continue to take they'll continue to take power in, they'll continue to take amps in. And when that amperage drops and it stops absorbing, when they get fully saturated with power, then that voltage, that amperage going into the battery will drop, and usually below 1 or 2 amps is considered fully charged. So you get up to, I don't know what you use, Mike. I think my Victrons are set to 2 amps. I don't think EG4 allows you to set it. They have it built in automatically, but I'm pretty sure it's around 2 or 3 amps. But even on Victron, though, you can go in and set it yourself. Let me see if I can actually... I like to show things like this instead of just talk about them. So let me just see if I can do that real quick on the Victron side of things. And I use this and this. And I'm going to switch to remove that and add this. All right. So we're going to look at the devices. So if we go in and look at the shunt, this is going to be the one that has the state of charge storage for me. And so I'm going to open this up, and it's probably going to launch a new window, which it did, and you're not going to be able to see that window. So let me take this screen off and add a new screen. I know there's got to be a way I can share the whole screen, but I don't know what it is. Share a screen, share a window. Oh, look at that. I can share a window. Share this one. All right, let's see if that works. Okay, so now I have both of, oh, I do, that worked great. All right, so that has my whole primary screen on it. So that'll make life a little easier. So in here, you can go in and you can set up under the configuration. And what I was saying about earlier for calibrating, you can set calibration to 0, meaning you want to say there are 0 amps running through this right now, and that makes it much more accurate. But my suggestion is when you do it, don't just think there's 0. Disconnect everything from the one of the sides. Flip the power off where the system is truly off and it's 0, and the only thing powered up is this item. Otherwise, it won't be as accurate as you think it is. That little bit of butterfly effect makes a big difference. All right, so let's look at, here we have what they call resets at threshold is 1 amp. Time to go is 1 minute. So it's going to say that it has to be at 1 amp, less than 1 amp above the charge voltage, which is 56.2 for 1 minute. And that's when it considers it a full charge, and it will drop to absorption time, which in my case, the absorption time will maintain the 56.2 for, I don't know what I've got it set to. Where is it? It's different in this than it is in the phone app. So I'm having problems recognizing charge time, detection, efficiency, threshold 1 amp. There is no time for absorption. Oh, that's because this isn't a charge controller. So this is going to that will cause it to reset. Now, in the charge controller, you could actually set absorption time and all that. But here with just a shunt, you can say, hey, I want you to drop below 1 amp and I want you to maintain it for 5 minutes. Now, the reason it's important to set that 1 minute is because you can temporarily have all your loads drop to where everything comes in and at a half an amp for 10 or 15 seconds, and it look like it's at a full charge. So you have to put that into where it consistently holds it for 1 minute. And I think I recently changed mine. Used to be 3 minutes is the standard setting, and I recently changed mine to 1 because I was having problems with it resetting during a couple of tests that I was having. So just so you know, 1 is kind of an extreme measure to take that I took in this case. All right. Better get back to the questions or we'll never get moving on. You and I could talk about these all day long. Can BMS data replace state of charge tracking completely? And I'm not sure I understand the question here. Are we talking about BMS data from like, this is one of those questions I'm not sure I get what they're asking. You have any idea what he's asking?
BMS data as far as the individual cell voltage?
Could be talking about the voltage coming from maybe and I'm thinking maybe the BMS data, meaning the BMS, all the voltage information, everything but the state of charge.
Right.
And the answer is, if you're talking about voltage, then sure, voltage, state of charge is a recent addition to solar. For years and 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 years, lead acid batteries use voltage. And the reason it was never a big deal is because there was this curve that slowly decayed over time. And you could easily say that at this voltage, you had this amount of charge.
The only reason that's changed is because now you have this bell curve where this long period of time, 80% of the time, voltage is almost exactly the same, and it's almost impossible to determine from day to day where your batteries are. And that's the only reason there's a difference.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Number 10. Steve says, when should you actually use lead acid mode on a lithium system? Other than all the time, Mike, what do you think?
You want something easy to set up.
When you want it to work all the time. When you don't have a requirement that requires state of charge, you don't have a permit that's required on it, you don't have a piece of equipment that requires it, you don't have, and you don't really have any use for it, or, and this is the reason that I switched. I had 3 EG4 batteries in my RV. I had a 6000 XP, and I was traveling around. I spent 18 months on the road, and we just went from beach to beach to beach, just boondocking and having fun. And one morning, it's about 6 o'clock. I have about 12% of my batteries left, and my system goes, warning, your batteries are low. And at 10%, it went, I'm shutting down. You only got 10% left. And there is no way to stop an EG4 6000 from shutting down at 10% if that's all you have connected, by the way. It will not do it. But if you switch to lead acid, it will run until the batteries hit 0. And I can tell you beyond benefit of a doubt, if I'm on a beach and the sun comes up in an hour, I want you to keep running. If I'm in a hurricane situation and I'm trying to survive, I want you to keep running. And please, for God's sakes, manufacturers, stop telling us when we can turn our batteries off and on.
Agreed.
So that's my answer. What do you think?
I think a lot of people, they'll start with communications. I mean, there's really two groups. First one is, I'm going to set up communications. I'm going to do this. This is how everyone does it. I'm going to set it up this way, and it's going to work. And it does. Second group is, why do I want to cable up more stuff? I'll just do it this way with the voltage, and it works. That's me. But in that first group that had it set up and working, at some point it fails them, or at some point it's just not working as well as it should, and they switch to voltage at that point. And when it's not working as well as it should, it could be a communication issue to where the inverter no longer sees the batteries. And now you're like, what the heck? Or it's just the SOC is just way off and you don't know why, so you're switching over to voltage. But I've seen a lot of people that they're connecting up their system. They're like, I can't get it to work. I can't get the inverter to turn on because it's not communicating. And my response is, why are you even doing it that way? Just switch to voltage and it will just put in lead acid mode and it just works.
And a perfect example of that is on the release of my next battery video. I literally had it off of the truck on a dolly, rolled into the solar shed, opened the box, pulled the cables out, twisted them onto the bus, plugged them in, and turned it on. It just so happens the battery voltage was within 1/10 of a volt, and I'm like, oh, here's the perfect opportunity.
Be pretty close.
They were within 1/10 of a volt. Flowing. I plugged them in, I flipped it on, I think it was 10 amps flow out for a second, and then it dropped. And I'm like, boom, the battery's connected. Comms, I played with for days trying to figure out a way that I'm going to get it into Home Assistant with the EG4 batteries going through the Solar Assistant and the DIY battery going through Bluetooth. And I need to do it to show that it works. But I tell you what,
right.
It literally him off the truck onto the system and was working within, I think it was 20 minutes of it being delivered to me. You won't be able to do that with state of charge. Period.
No. And that's key that you bring up. They have to be within 1/10 of a volt. If it is a big difference between them, you will test the integrity of your wires. You will test if your breakers work or not, and your fuses. Do those popization?
Well, and here's the big difference between some people's systems and other people's systems. So if you have 1 or 2 batteries in your system and you plug them in and there's a 2 or 3 volt difference and they're the same size battery, chances are there'll be some shifting back and forth, but this battery can't pull more than that battery can provide, so there's not much of a problem. If you have 20 batteries in your battery system and there's a 4 volt difference, you plug this new battery in and it's 4 volts different, you have 20 batteries pulling from it, you are going to test your fuses and your breakers and your switches and stuff like that.
And that is
especially
why,
if you got T-class fuses like Mike. They're all going to go right down the line.
And that's why the T-class fuses are there. If there is a short, then each string has its own T-class fuse, and it's above and beyond the protection of the breakers that are on the batteries. Because you've got to remember, not all batteries are UL listed, and the breakers may be questionable. So just because the breaker says 125 amps doesn't mean it's going to break.
Well, and most breakers are based on heat resistance, not really truly amps. It takes 120 amps for some prolonged period to cause it. But you put a T-class fuse in there and it says 120 amps. It's usually at 130 amps. It's not a fuse anymore. It's an open circuit. Yeah. And it's also going to cost you $50 and you'll be more careful next time.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Good question, Steve. Let's see. Mike.
I think Will Prouse had one that had shorted out in one of his videos, and he's like, oh yeah, there went the T-class fuse.
Yes, he did. And he's like, I didn't even know it had a fuse in there. He says, damn, now I got to buy a new fuse. Yeah. We've all been there and done that.
So the voltage cutoffs, you set that on your inverters, what you want it to be at. So I have mine set at 49 volts. I think that Matt has his at a different voltage for his. What do you, 48?
48. I use 48. And I don't use it for cutoff. For cutoff, I use 42 or 43, depending on what mood I'm in. I use 48 for my go to some kind of backup power supply. My Shellys kick off all kinds of loads and stuff like that. I mean, I go into conservation mode at that point. And it depends on my system. If it's like my RV, it's going to shut off the hot water heater. It's going to shut off, anything that has a draw unless there's grid. And then if there's grid, it's just going to turn the grid on and turn the charger on. And if it can't get to the grid from the 6000, then that probably means that I only had like a 15 amp fuse or a 15 amp plug. And that means it's going to switch the dry contacts on to turn on the charger, usually the charge verter, and that will flip that switch and the charge verter will kick on and it'll start charging that way. So it depends on the system really, because I use automation a lot for things like that.
So for me, 49 volts, and I have the warning light on the 12,000 XPs changed from green to amber at 50. So at 50 volts, it's telling me, hey, things are pretty low. So if I'm walking past it and I see that, it's like, okay, it's low. But at 49, I cut it off. And the reason being is, remember I talked about how I had those lead time batteries in series and I had a couple of them that bricked. And that's because the voltage had gotten too low and, a couple batteries just brick. So that's why I kind of raised it up to 49. The other thing about 49 is it's arguably a little bit easier on the batteries because you're not pulling them as low at the
and that's why I use 48, because there isn't really, you could go as low as 42 and there isn't but a couple percentage points difference in there. And at that point, they're so low that even if a high device kicks on, if a big device with a big pull, it's probably going to throw it into grid mode anyway, if
Right.
there's a grid available, or it's going to shut down if there is no grid available. So either way, it's a good thing at that when it gets that low. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about, is that just because your inverter can support 3,000 watts or 6,000 watts, your battery in its current state has to be able to support it also. And if you have a 100 amp hour battery, but it takes 100 amps to run 3,000 watts or 2,000 watts or whatever, you're not going to have any ability to respond to a surge whatsoever. So that's kind of, and the big lesson learned there was in the 3,000 EHVs. They are really big on watching the state of charge and telling you it won't do it because it can't do it, as opposed to trying it and watching it shut down.
Right.
Which most inverters will just go ahead and try it. And if it shuts down, it says, look, I can't get the voltage. But those will not. They'll just say, nope, I'm not going to do this. And it'll just won't even try. What was the question?
That's a good point, because the thing is that your level of charge can affect how much the inverters can output. So especially if you have a small battery bank, you could be at 20% charge and not have enough to feed the inverter because it's demanding more than what it has. But you could also have a larger bank, be down to 10%, and still provide everything that the inverter needs.
Yeah. And just real quick, I'm going to go through, if you need some parts for any of my systems, there's a link up there, and then you can watch that in the replay and pause it if you need it. And then this is Mike's Solar Forum. I encourage you all to go sign up for that. He's got some good conversations going on over there. And if you're looking for a backup refrigerator type system, just to keep the refrigeration running during a hurricane or a bad storm or something, I've got a nice online class here that will walk you through it step by step, how to build every piece of it. It's perfect for beginners to get into solar, and it also works great for providing power to RVs. Okay, that part's over with. Let's get back to it.
If I could mention just one thing real quick that you
Sure.
had stated, which is really important, making sure that your refrigeration is covered. Now, I have myself, and maybe some of your viewers are in the same boat, you have refrigerated medications. And some of those medications can be quite expensive. Mine is in the thousands per month. And with that's why I got my portable power stations to begin with, and got into solar, because the power here is inconsistent. But everybody should have something to power at least your fridge, especially if you have some sort of medication.
This is the reason I built this class, and this is the one I've been touring lately, going around and showing this to different people. 2 weeks ago, I was at a gun show. Last week, I was at a mall in Jacksonville. This coming week, I'm at. I'll have to post it. I don't remember. I'm Saturday. I'm at some park somewhere, and I'll be doing it. But I bring the system out. I demo it. It is basically a DIY, miniature DIY solar system for exactly that purpose: refrigeration, medical supplies, PAPS machines, that type of things. It's just a small 24-volt system. But the cool part is depending on what level you want to be involved, whether you want to build the whole thing yourself, I walk you through every piece to buy, piece by piece. I walk you through building the clamps, building the wires, building everything. If you don't want to do the first level, you can order a wiring kit from me where I just ship you the wires, and then you just order the parts and connect it. If you don't want to do that, you can actually pick one up from me at a show, or I can ship one to you completely built. And then you have the DIY system to get started from there, obviously. But it's a great class. There's a free wiring diagram. If you follow that link, you can get the free wiring diagram, and then it'll walk you through the rest of it from there if you're interested. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Perfect lead in for me. Let's go on to, where were we at? Keep clicking on the wrong menu here. This one. Why does state of charge sometimes stay flat for a long time and then suddenly drop fast? And I'm assuming that you're talking about state of charge that's based on battery voltage. And if it's based on the battery voltage, you have this section here in the middle with this section here in the middle where the state of charge is exactly the same, or it will look exactly the same for a long period of time until there's a significant battery voltage change. Because sometimes these lithium iron phosphate batteries for 20, 30, 40% can stay the same voltage. And that's why you'll see that nominal voltage. What they're basically saying is that, look, this battery is going to sit at this nominal voltage for that 80% window or really close to it. You got anything you want to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, the other thing too is if you're looking at SOC and it stays flat and then all of a sudden drops off, if you're noticing that it's at the very top, I would think that maybe, you know, some of your batteries aren't fully charging up to 100%. You know, it's saying it's 100%, but the cells are in balance and it believes it's at 100% because the BMS kicked off because one of the cells was a runner and hit that high voltage before the rest of them, and the BMS cut off, whereas the battery's truly at 80% charge. It's just that one cell was a runner and made the BMS think it was 100%. So if they're not all balanced, you know, the cells or the batteries themselves to each other, then yeah, it can drop in those scenarios.
And those runners drop as fast as they rise too, so that it starts to look really high, and then all of a sudden the battery changes dramatically because one cell in the whole battery affects it.
Well, it's like those 280 amp hour EcoWorthies. There was one battery, it would show 80%, and then bloop, it would flip up to 100 within, you know, 15 minutes. And you're like, there's no way it charged 20% in 15 minutes. Big battery. So, yeah.
Yeah, the state of charge is so inaccurate. Sometimes it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Kevin asks, if I have multiple batteries in parallel, can state of charge get out of sync between them?
Yep.
And yes, state of charge will get out of sync between them. And if it don't, it is really, really rare. I have
oh, sorry. I meant to say, especially if they're different sizes as well.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of batteries that I do. And let me see if I can get to this screen here. I really don't like the way it moves those around. So you can see these two batteries right here, 86 and 88. It's a 300 amp hour and a 280 amp hour. They run serially together. The 300 amp hour was only registering 280. So I put them together just to test it, to see how close they were to actually run, to find out what was going on. And they actually stay really, really close. The only other ones I've ever had stay so close are missing from this. These were two Chinese batteries, the first two I ever ordered, and they probably stay the closest I've ever seen. But yeah, they will get completely out of sync. They will run up and down, even if they're the same size, bought at the same time, treated exactly the same, have perfectly sized cables. They no two things are the identical, and batteries are far from an exception of that rule.
And then it depends that the brands, are they all the same brand, all the same model? The BMSs can make a difference. The resistance of the cells, so the cells are going to be similar in the same brand and the same model, usually within the same battery. So like I've got 18 of these Thatcher batteries, and they're all within 1% of each other. It doesn't matter what time of day, they're just perfectly balanced, beautiful cells that are in it. They have Eve cells, which I absolutely love Eve cells. But yeah, there's a lot of variables that play into it, but it's best if you're trying to go off of SOC, it is best to have all the exact same battery, same brand, same model, all of them identical. That's going to be your best for SOC.
And keep in mind, the real question becomes, and I'm not sure that anyone really has enough data to answer this question yet. In the long run, they'll say that some batteries are going to be worked harder and others are going to not last as long because of that. But the question becomes, if you've got 10,000 cycles and you're doing 200 cycles a year, does it matter? that your battery lasts 22 years as opposed to 28 years. So, and that's really the question from my perspective. A lot of these batteries that if you've got 10,000 cycles, and most people cycle their battery about 200 times a year, I mean, you're literally looking at 50 years of battery life off of that battery. Whoops, that's not right. 50 years. I wish 50 years. That would be nice. 10,000 divided by 200 is basically, God, divided by 200 is 50 years. I mean, is it going to matter that you took an extra 10% or 20% off your battery in 50 years from now? Are you going to care? And that's the real question. We don't know yet. These batteries haven't been around long enough to even know.
And the thing is, the failure rate, nobody knows. They give you these approximate hours. You remember when LED bulbs first came out, and they said that they were going to last 20 times longer than, you know, an incandescent, and they didn't. So
well, they do, but they only last 20 times longer than the one that's on the porch in the little glass dome that burns out once a week. That's the one they last 20 times longer than.
But true. But the if you're trying to keep things as balanced as well as possible, same battery, same you know, manufacturer, make sure that they're identical, equal length cables between all the batteries, and the thicker gauge wire, the better. It's got to be fused for that wire, but the thicker gauge wire, the better, because then it acts, if you have really thick wire, then it acts like it's truly one big battery. But if you have thinner gauge wire and the wires are different lengths, then they act completely like separate batteries. You want it to act as much as possible like one battery, but it's got to be the same exact battery for all of them with the same length cables for all of them. It's got to truly be wired as if you wired together yourself one big battery.
Yeah. And all of those things all create the butterfly effect for all of the stated charges, for all of the draws, for all of the things over every minute of every day of every hour. And then the longer you go between those charges, the bigger that butterfly effect gets. And even a really small, minor difference in anything along the way can cause it to do. But he's absolutely right. Get the same batteries, the same types of cells, the same type of cables, the same lengths, the same, and also this. And when he says the same size of cables, he's not talking about some copper-clad aluminum cables. He's talking about some real cables with low resistance, not the bigger ones that don't really provide the benefits of the larger cables. And very, very common, especially these days. There's a lot of crap out on Amazon that is just really, I don't know what happened over the last couple of years. I think that the influx of DIYers into the market has caused them to start advertising some less than ethical ways with their wiring.
The only wire that I use is welding wire, and it's made by a company called Temco, Temco, and it's an American manufacturer of copper wire. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than some of the others, not a massive difference, like 10% more, but it is pure copper wire. It is welding wire, so it's fine strands in it, and it's going to have the least amount of resistance. It's what you're going to want, you know, to use to have the least amount of resistance, the best flow, but it has a nice thick insulator around it as well, so you have less of a chance of things shorting out. And when you have hundreds of amps going through it, you want to make sure that you're using good wire.
So in that, or you want the welding wire is good, the ones he's talking about, but they have marine grade, 105 degrees marine grade wire with the pure copper tinned wire. And the reason I like that is because I spent a lot of time traveling and with a lot of beaches, and the copper wire is nice, but the tinned copper wire makes a huge difference in the way it ages and the connectors go and stuff like that. So
True, true.
But it's not cheap. That's the problem. Then it
Right.
becomes a matter of where you put your batteries compared to your inverters, where your batteries are compared to your bus bars, and that kind of stuff makes a big difference in your the way you do things. All right, where are we here? We are at. I know, Mike, it's going on. I know if it starts to get too late, let me know, and we'll call it early.
I'm fine.
Okay. Didn't realize we've been going for 2 hours and 30 minutes already. It just seems like 5 minutes to me. Tony asked, does using solar charging versus grid charging affect the state of charge accuracy? I know with Victron devices, there is or at least with not Victron, with lead acid batteries, there used to be a huge difference in the absorption level for high voltage charges versus low voltage slow charges. There was a sweet spot in the middle, and you'll notice that in the part I was going to say about Victron devices is they actually have a configuration for it now, and it's set to 99% now, where it used to be with no deviance. And they call it what do they call that? The Putrid Act. Putrid. Let me see if I can figure it. Let me see if I can show it here. So in that device, they have this Putrid exponent, and this is basically 0.1%. And when you use lead acid, this can be as much as 20%. And what happens is you have this big influx of power with a lead acid battery, but it can't absorb it as fast as you're providing it. So there is diminishing results depending on how fast you're putting the power in. And so the old chargers used to allow you to set this formula here that was based on how it was going to absorb it. Now with lead acid, with lithium iron phosphate, the good news is it's almost non-existent. It's 99% efficiency and 1.05 of the exponent, which means there's this very, very minor difference in charging it at full rate. Matter of fact, I haven't had a battery test. I don't know about you, Mike. I haven't had one in probably the last year since they've really gotten these lead acid batteries done, that has had much difference at all. Have you? In charging it at full speed versus 0.1C or 0.2C?
So there is a little bit of a difference, but it's percentages.
Minuscule.
A few percentages. What I tend to do is when I'm charging up batteries, like I've got one on the bench next to me that I'm about to do the capacity test on. I'll start it up after we end. But when I charge it, I'll charge it all the way up, and then I'll select my amperage down to like 2 amps, and I'll hit the charger again, and I normally get in just a little bit more. And then when I'm discharging, I'll discharge it at a standard rate. But then when it's getting close, I'll drop the amperage down a little bit, so that way it doesn't accidentally hit that lower mark and cut off prematurely, because that's going to be more realistic. Because when your battery is down to like 5%, most people aren't going to try to pull 50 amps through it.
So I've been doing my capacity test. I do the 0.2, which is basically 20% of it. Yeah. I'll do that for charge and discharge, and then I'll do a 0.5 of its rated capacity, and then I'll do 100% of its rated capacity, both charge and discharge. And to be honest with you, I've been really impressed lately. Between the BMSs, the quality of the builds, that there is really small differences. It was really big at the very beginning. You would lose, 10, 12%. Nowadays, sometimes I don't even have a difference. Sometimes the matter of fact, I think Will had one where he did a 1C charge and discharge and got the same results as me. Got more production out of the battery.
The older ones, there used to be a little bit of a difference, but yeah.
I think they've just got the efficiency down that much. But that's what all of this is about here with the Victron devices. It used to be very important that your lithium iron phosphate or your AGM or your lead acid or whatever type of battery it was, that you had those set correctly, because it had a huge impact. Nowadays, as long as you stay within their region, I usually stay, especially if I'm just doing a grid charge, I won't do, unless it's a battery test for the purposes of testing it, I won't usually do more than 0.2 or 0.3 C, which is 20 or 30% of its rated capacity, for those who don't know. Okay. 15, Eric asks, how do I properly sync the state of charge after installing a new battery or a system? The easiest way that I've found is if I'm plugging in a battery that has the same state of charge. Usually I go into the shunt, the Victron shunt, and I just tell it the state of charge, and it adjusts it based on how many amp hours I have. So I tell it how many amp hours there are in a state of charge. If I have it in a bank of a system and I'm just I do a top balance and bring everything up and have them all reset. I don't know what you do with yours, Mike.
Yeah, mine is, I have my bank charged up to 100%. Then I have the battery charged up to 100. Once they're at 100%, and when I say 100%, I mean I'm looking at the cell voltages and the voltages on the battery, and it's truly at 100%.
Everything's at that 56 volts exactly. Absorption is down to 0.
Make sure
and then you plug in a new battery, reset all your
truly at 100% voltage. Then I connect it up, and there's 0 spark. No spark whatsoever, because there is 0 difference in potential. And then I connect it up, and the SOC right then and there is reset, because all the batteries were reset because everything got up to 100%. Yep.
Yeah, the only difference is if you're using something like a Victron, then you do have to go in and change your maximum capacity at that point. I will do occasionally, I will do it midstream if I know the voltages are close and I know approximately where it is. And sometimes I'll do it midstream when the voltages are close, and then I'll do a full charge after that. Like if I know I'm going to do an overnight charge of the system for some kind of burn off or something like that, I'll charge all the batteries and then I'll disconnect. Like tonight, I'm doing the watt cycle test tomorrow. So I'm just charging all the batteries up, and then I'll do the watt cycle test with the amp miner tomorrow. And then I'll put it on a charger and switch over to the full battery bank instead of a partial battery bank. And then I can merge them back together at the end of the day, like you said, at 100%. So same thing, but that's how you do it. Is usually you just sync it up by connecting them when everything is at 100%. That's the easiest way and the safest way.
Yep.
Can communication between the battery and the inverter, like CAN bus, make state of charge more reliable? It doesn't change state of charge. All it does is tells the inverter what the state of charge is. And it only works today reliably when all of the batteries are of a compatible type. And most of the time that means the same brand. There are a few exceptions to that where you can get some other brands to work with. Some of the EG4s I've seen working with some of the EcoWorthies, I think it was. I saw some videos on that one. And I've seen a couple of other ones like that where they use like the Pylon protocol and get it to kind of work. But even EG4, between some of their older batteries and their V2 batteries, in order to get them to work, you have to have them numbered in a specific way and get it all, everything to stand on its head just right. So yes, but it doesn't make it more reliable. It just makes it work. Paul asks, why does my system behave differently overnight compared to during the day in the same mode? I think he's talking about having solar coming in.
Need more details. If you want to follow up, Paul, and put some additional details in there.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, Paul, but I'm suspecting what you're asking is, why overnight would it work differently compared to during the day when you have solar coming in? And if you've got solar coming in and your battery is not big enough to support your full inverter strength, which is I see is really common. People get a single 12-volt battery, they hook a big giant inverter up, except especially some of these big 4,000, 5,000 watt inverters from these 12-volt things. And they have no chance of powering it. But that also means during the day when you have solar coming in and you have your battery, you have a chance of powering more of it than you would.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I can think the question might be pertaining to.
Yeah.
Is there a point where voltage is actually more accurate than stated charge for lithium batteries?
Yes.
I was going to say it, but I figured I'd let you say it.
You have to memorize the table, and just do a search for 48 volt LFP voltage chart. And there's a few different images that will pop up, and they're really good. They'll tell you what's 100%, what's 90, 80, 70, so on and so forth. And I just go off of that. It's even color coded too, which is beautiful.
All right.
If you could pull one up.
I'm actually, that's exactly what I'm doing. But of course, the internet is going super slow as I'm doing it. So give me just a second. Let's see if I can get it to pop up here. All right, here we go. I got some variation of it anyway. Let's see if this is still working. It is.
The top left one. Yeah, pull that one up. That's the one I use.
And one of the things to note about this, and this is, I'm just going to tell this for some people, that I really have a tendency to use this number over here, but that's because I work with so many different systems. I got 12-volt systems and 24-volt systems and 48-volt systems. So for me, it's easier to remember, you know, at rest is 3.4 volts. Now you can take that, and if it's a 12-volt, it's times 4. If it's 24, it's times 8. If it's 48, it's times 16. If it's 72, it's times 20, and so on and so forth. You can even get into high voltage batteries and do it that way. But this one gives you the ups, the biggest thing here is talking about 58.4, and this is the maximum cell voltage for a lithium iron phosphate. So I would not suggest you use this maximum. I suggest you go somewhere between the 3.4 and the 3.65. As me and Mike was talking about, he uses 56, which is 56 divided by 16, which is 3.5 volts. So almost in the middle. It's a little closer to the at-rest side. Although the at-rest one is exactly, almost exactly what we use. I use 54, he uses 54. So, but that's a pretty good chart. And you can pretty much figure out where you are. Now that part in the green area in the middle, it's very iffy. It really is.
And if you look at it, so like my warning light goes on at 51 volts. And if you look at 51.2, it's basically the 20% mark. That's when my warning light goes on and says it's going to fail soon. And you have your
I have mine set at 48.
Which is,
and I say
10%.
That's because it's about 8%. Yep, and it's pretty close. It's 8 to 10% depending on which batteries I have hooked up. Almost very reliably.
And I think mine at 49 volts is maybe 13%. It's just a smidge different.
Yeah,
but,
and there's really a very little, like 48% or 48 volts and 46 volts. There is like, it goes from like 8% to 6%. I mean, the voltage change there is in that knee. This is where you get back to that knee and you start really seeing the change in the in that swing up or that swing down here when you get to that end piece. So, all right, 19. How should you set cutoff values differently when running high surge loads on AC or pumps?
It depends on the size of your battery bank. The bigger your battery bank, the less that the loads are going to affect it.
And the bigger your wires too, because your wires make a big difference on that. Yeah.
If you have a smaller bank and you have large appliances such as the ones that you have there, you're going to have to compensate your shutoff voltage based on, do you have a big load or not? And that might be where, like Matt's, you have it set at 48 volts, because you could be at 49 or 50 volts, but you only have a couple of batteries, and you put on a big load and it quickly drops down to 48 and then trips it and shuts it off. So
yeah, I've seen that in the RV where it'll hit 48, it'll hit 50 for a little while when a coffee pot or a hot water heater turns on. But yet, if you're 20 minutes away from, sun taking over, you really don't want it to go into that backup mode of hitting the grid or holding off or whatever it is. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
In my shop, if I lift a car with one of my car lifts, my voltage drop on my batteries is a quarter of a volt. So yeah. That's where, like I said, the bigger the battery bank, sometimes the better. And if anybody in here has aquariums, saltwater tanks, what have you, I used to be really big into it. The larger the amount of water, the more stable that the tank is. Keeping the salinity right, keeping the chemicals right, because volume is your friend. Same with batteries. The more batteries that you have in your bank, the more stable that your voltages are going to be.
All right. Then we will move on to the last question. Greg asks, what is the best setup for someone who wants to set it and forget it system with minimal monitoring? And I'll let you answer this because I am a monitor kind of person.
I would say get a grid boss and a flex boss.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to switch between grid and solar automatically based on where the batteries are at, and you'll never have to touch anything. That's, if you want your set it and forget it system, grid boss, flex boss. And
of course, on that one, you're going to want to go with the compatible batteries, either the EcoWorthies or the EG4s, where you can plug them in, where it's got the state of charge, where it slows its charging down when some batteries get full, speeds them up, where it automatically takes care of everything for you. And then you can configure, you can have those commissioned where the grid, it knows when to turn the grid on, when to blend the grid, when to shut it off, if you're peak shaving, or any of those type of configurations can all be set up. And I think the biggest thing that comes down to this is set it and forget it. You have to have somebody who knows how to configure it. And that's what really becomes important, is getting that initial configuration is where the forget it comes in, because without the monitoring, because if they know what they're doing, they can get it to come on and go off and handle your peak shaving, handle your charging, handle your things. And then the only time you really need to worry about it is, okay, there's a hurricane coming, or, you're going to have a wide power outage or something, which doesn't really happen these days. I guess we don't have too many blackouts or brownouts anymore with the way the grid is these days, but it still could happen in some places. Great. All right, let's make sure. I think we had some comments come in while we were doing all of that. Let's just cover them real quick. Oh, no, only a few. Probably not even here yet. Not even here. It was like 45 minutes ago. Donnie says, I run JK BMS with absorption timer set to all 4 taking 0 amps, and they work great for me. Yeah, the JK is wonderful for configuring that stuff, especially for the DIYer who wants to set it. You get to set all the little intricate details on it, and it's pretty good. And I've got a video specifically on the JK setting them up if anyone's interested. It says 0 current will draw every little. It says 0 current. It will draw every little while when the balance voltage changes. Missing comma somewhere. It says 0 current. It will draw very little when the balance voltage changes. I'm not sure what the question is here, Roy. I think we missed a couple of words or a couple of punctuation marks somewhere. I have my balancer set to 5 millivolts and all 64 of my cells are within 0.3 millivolts. Another reason I like JK. Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing on my 304 amp DIY battery is 5 millivolts, and I set it to 3.4 volts to come on, and mine are usually within 1 or 2 millivolts of each other also. It's very, very nice. I like comms because my master battery controls my inverter, not the inverter controlling charge and discharge. I set the cell voltage levels from my BMS controller. Yep.
Okay.
All right. I think that's it. And then I do want to do my normal celebration here. 22,436 subscribers. We had another banner week. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It is amazing. Mike, I appreciate you coming and celebrating it with me, having a wonderful time again. Have no idea what the next few weeks holds. I had something planned for next week, but to be honest with you, I forgot what it was. So I will figure it out and get it posted here as soon as I can. Looks like the software change was a success this week. I did go ahead and buy the licensed version. I couldn't handle not having all the features. So I have it for a year at least and no more OBS, which is kind of nice because all of those modules I had to test every week before I went on live, and half of the time they didn't work. Was all resolved this week and worked the first time. So things are a little bit different, but not too bad. Anyway, I do want to one more time give you guys a chance to go over to Mike's solar form and sign up for that. This is the scan code for that. He's got a cool little solar form over there. If I remember correctly, it is windsolarform.com.
Yep.
And he's basically got some forums going on over here with different content and stuff. And I haven't had a chance yet to take the time to post anything or get anything out there, but I'm sure I'll find something. If you come up with anything you'd like to see, Mike, just let me know. I'm super prolific, so I have no problem creating content. And then
love to see some content on Home Assistant.
Okay. I'll be glad to do it. I'll put something out there for it, and we'll get some stuff going on that. No problem. If you're interested in any of the builds that I have or anything that's going on with what I've got going on, this is the link to this. This basically takes you to mattmansolar.com/start. This is my starting place for everything that you're looking for. If you're looking for parts list, if you're looking for equipment that I use, if you're looking for anything that I've got going on, if you need free diagrams, they're here. If you want to get involved with the refrigerator system here, soon I will have a full class on an RV setup. I'm going to do 2 RV setups. I'm going to do a 120 setup and a 240 setup because the 50 ampers have gotten so popular. And then I'm going to do a small cabin one also. Also, if you need a one-on-one call or an in-home review, please just follow those links. They'll take care of that. Otherwise, down through here, all my most popular builds, all the different equipment that I use, you can see links to all of them. There's different coupon codes and stuff for them all. And any specials that are coming out, you will see them listed here. And any equipment or tools that I use will be listed down here. This is just a great, I stopped about 3 months ago, putting it all on, linking it to every video. Every video's content is now on this one page, and it makes it real easy for everyone to remember where it is. And I was going to put the QR code up here for the refrigerator, which I will go ahead and throw it up there, but it is also at the top of this page right here. So if you need anything, guys, let me know. Mike, thank you so much for coming again. I know
my pleasure.
It was a great fun, and I'm sure we'll find something else that we can do in the future together. I don't know if I don't think we've talked about it yet, have we? I've been traveling all week. Sorry, I'm a little out of it. I had this morning. It's hard to believe I woke up and started in a different city with an RV and brought it home, got it all undone and unpacked everything, got the live stream all set up before I got here. So been a long day for me. So I appreciate you coming, and everyone online, thanks again for all of your support, and we will see you guys on the next one, you know, I thought I had something to play or something to do here at the end, but I'd be danged if I remember. And as soon as I get off of this, I'm going to be like, oh, I forgot to do this, or I forgot to do that. You set up all these things to run, but you don't actually get to do them all. All right, guys, it was fun. Thank you so much. You guys have a great time, and we'll see you next week.